The first kill came clean. Ava Brooks caught the enemy crossing between two burned-out cars on Urban Collapse and clicked before he had time to duck. His avatar dropped. She slid behind a concrete barrier, swapped weapons, and listened through the headset for footsteps beneath the game audio. No voice chat. Never voice chat. Her mic icon stayed muted in the corner of the screen, exactly where she liked it. At school, silence helped her disappear. She could sit in the back of English with her hood up and earbuds in, even when nothing played through them. She could eat lunch in the library with her laptop open, one tab showing homework and another playing speedrun videos. If she stayed quiet long enough, people stopped expecting anything from her. In real life, that was useful. In ranked lobbies, it was complicated. Quiet players were assumed to be bad until they proved otherwise. Quiet girls, in Ava's experience, had it worse. The first time she ever used voice chat in Frontline Protocol, she had said only one thing. Enemy on B. The lobby went still. Then came the laughter. Was that a girl? Oh, we're dead. Nice. Throwing already. She had carried them anyway. Most kills. Best accuracy. Most time on objective. She had done everything but reach through the screen and play their characters for them. They lost. They blamed her. After that, Ava learned the system. Ping locations. Type short messages. Let her aim speak for her. Silence caused fewer problems than being heard. Tonight was supposed to be ordinary. One ranked match before bed. Maybe two if the queue was kind. Then sleep, school, and another day of moving through hallways with her eyes down. Urban Collapse loaded fully. Ava smiled. Favorite map. Her team spawned in, 5 random players with 5 random levels of competence. She checked weapons, watched the mini-map, and moved left through the broken street before anyone else decided where to go. Her aim felt good. Better than good. Sharp in that rare way where her hands seemed to know what to do before her thoughts caught up. She dropped 2 enemies in the first minute. A message appeared in team chat. Nice shot. Ava ignored it. By round 3, she was at the top of the scoreboard. By round 5, the other team had stopped playing casually and started hunting her. They doubled corners. They baited objectives. They tried rushing together and died together. Her team was winning, but not by much. Then someone typed. Can anyone voice? Comms would help. Ava stared at the line. Her character crouched behind a half-collapsed wall, reloading. On the scoreboard, the gap had shrunk. The enemy team had figured out their rotations, and pings were starting to feel too slow. She could keep carrying quietly. She could also lose quietly. Her cursor hovered over the mic button. She remembered the laughter from 2 years ago. Her stomach tightened. Then she clicked. She said, keeping her voice low. I can call if you need me to. No one spoke for a second. Ava braced. A guy answered first. Young. Casual. Not mocking. Oh, thank God. Yes, please. I keep missing rotations like an idiot. Ava blinked. That was it? No joke. No weird pause. No comment about her voice. Just relief. She cleared her throat. 2 going left. One's already low. Don't peek middle yet. Copy, he said. Holding your angle. He actually held it. Ava pushed forward, expecting him to run ahead and ruin the setup like random teammates usually did. He did not. He covered the opening, waited for her flank, and fired exactly when she needed him to. They took the point. Something small and cautious loosened in her chest. The rest of the match changed after that. Not loudly. No one became best friends in the lobby. They kept it simple. One top window. Back up, they're baiting. ULT in 5. I'll rotate behind them. Got you. He listened. That was the strange part. When Ava said not to push, he waited. When she told him to move right, he moved right. When she called a flank, he adjusted before she even finished the sentence. He was not perfect, but he paid attention, and in ranked that was almost a miracle. The win screen appeared 20 minutes later. Ava was MVP. Hex Knight was second. He laughed into voice chat. Okay. So you were absolutely carrying us. You played well, Ava said. Only because you kept telling me where not to die. You adapted. That is the nicest insult I've ever gotten. Ava laughed before she could stop herself. The sound surprised her. The next match queued automatically. They landed on the same team again. Then again. Then again. Ava forgot to check the time. Between rounds, the conversation stretched past callouts. He asked about her favorite maps. She told him Urban Collapse was the best designed map in the game, and he said that was a bold and possibly criminal opinion. He complained about the Viper rifle. She defended it. They agreed the last update had ruined the shotgun balance and probably half the developer's credibility. Then he asked, "Are you secretly pro?" No. That was too fast. I'm not pro. I just play a lot. Same. It's either this or homework, and this gives me numbers that go up. Ava smiled. You're in school? Senior year. Her fingers paused on the keyboard. Me too. No kidding? No kidding. Great. So we're both spending the last year before adulthood pretending to save cities with fake weapons. Could be worse. Could be homework. Exactly. He laughed again, and Ava found herself waiting for it after that. Later, while they sat in the lobby, he said, "So what does Void Bloom mean?" It sounds like a band that only plays in abandoned warehouses. Ava looked at her username. It's from Banta Black, she said. The blackest black. That tracks. Mysterious. Slightly alarming. It's not alarming. It is when you drop 30 kills and then calmly explain color theory. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. What about Hex Knight? I was 12. I thought chess sounded cool. Do you not think chess sounds cool now? A pause. I refused to answer on legal grounds. She laughed again. They kept playing until her eyes burned and her phone buzzed with a low battery warning. Ava glanced at the clock and sat up straighter. Almost midnight. I should go, she said, though she did not want to. I have school tomorrow. Yeah. Same. Early class. Neither of them left the lobby. The menu music looped softly through her headset. Ava watched their two usernames sit side by side on the team list. Well, he said at last, sounding a little awkward now that there were no enemies to shoot, this was weirdly the most fun I've had in ranked. Same, Ava admitted. A notification appeared. Friend request from Hex Knight. Ava stared at it. Her stomach did something stupid. Only if you want, he added quickly. No pressure. I just thought maybe we could queue together again sometime. Ava let the request sit there for 3 seconds. Then she clicked accept. Yeah, she said. I'd like that. Cool. I'll invite you tomorrow? Okay. Night, Void Bloom. Night, Hex Knight. He laughed softly at the nickname, and then the lobby went quiet. Ava took off her headset and sat in the blue light of her monitor, hand still resting on the keyboard. At school, she was good at being invisible. Tonight, someone had looked straight through the silence and found her anyway. She did not know yet that Hex Knight was not a stranger at all. He was a boy she passed in the hallway every day without ever lifting her eyes. Ava woke up with the uncomfortable feeling that she'd forgotten something important. Her eyes opened to gray morning light and the soft hum of her computer fan that she'd definitely forgotten to switch off. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, letting her brain boot up slowly like an old laptop. Then it hit her. Hex Knight. The friend request. The laugh. The way he said her gamertag like it meant something. Ava sat up too quickly and the room spun. She blinked hard, then grabbed her phone from the bed and checked the time. 7:12 a.m. If she moved now, she could still catch the bus. If she didn't, her mom would offer to drive her, and that would mean conversation. Questions. Comments about how late Ava stayed up. Worries about screen time and sleep and eye strain. Ava got out of bed, pulled on her uniform without thinking too much about it, and tied her hair into a knot that was more practical than cute. She looked in the mirror for exactly 2 seconds. She wasn't unattractive. She knew that in a vague, distant way, like knowing a fact you once read in a book and never tested. She had clear skin, greenish-brown eyes, and hair that behaved if she bullied it into a ponytail. If she cared enough to try, she could probably be pretty. She just did not care. Fashion felt like a language everyone else spoke fluently while she fumbled with the alphabet. Makeup looked like art and also like effort, and Ava had never wanted to spend her limited energy looking like someone she wasn't. She shoved her laptop into her bag, threw a hoodie over her uniform, and headed to the kitchen. Her mom was already there, tea in hand, scrolling her phone with that particular morning expression that meant she was halfway awake and fully prepared to say something sensible. "You're up," her mom said, voice warm. Ava reached for a piece of toast. Her mom glanced at her. "You were up late." Ava paused, toast halfway to her mouth. "Not that late." Her mom gave her the look. Ava took a bite and chewed slowly, buying time. "It was just a good gaming night." "Did you at least win?" Ava's mouth twitched. "Yes." "Good. Winning makes late nights slightly more acceptable." Ava blinked. "Slightly?" Her mom smiled. "Slightly. It was easy like that sometimes." Ava's mom didn't fully understand games, but she had never been one of those parents who acted like hobbies were a moral failure. She just worried, quietly and constantly, like most moms did. Ava finished her toast, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door. "Have a good day," her mom called. Ava paused with her hand on the handle. For a moment, she wanted to say something about Hex Night. Not the details, just the weird fact of it. That she'd talked to a stranger for hours and felt lighter. That she'd laughed so hard she'd nearly missed the end of match countdown. But the words stuck. Ava's life existed in two separate rooms, and she didn't open the door between them. "Yeah," she said instead. "You too." Outside, the air was sharp and cold. Ava pulled her hoodie tighter and walked quickly toward the bus stop, earbuds in, no music playing. It made people less likely to talk to her. It made her feel like she had a force field. At the stop, a group of girls from her year stood clustered together, bright and loud and somehow already fully awake. Their uniforms were tailored in ways that felt unofficial but somehow allowed. Their hair looked deliberate. Their bags looked expensive. Ava stood a few steps away, looking at the road. She didn't hate them. She wasn't bitter. She just didn't fit into their orbit. The bus arrived with a sigh of brakes. Ava climbed on, scanned her card, and walked to the back, choosing the seat where the sun never hit. She put her bag on the seat beside her and rested her forehead briefly against the cool glass. Her phone buzzed. Ava blinked at it. A notification from the game's companion app. Hex Night is online. Her heart did that stupid flip again. It was ridiculous. She did not even know his real name. She didn't know what he looked like. She didn't know if he was tall or short or awkward or confident. He could be anyone. But he'd been kind. Online kindness was rare enough that it felt like spotting a comet. You didn't forget it. Another buzz. A message appeared. Hex Night, yo void bloom you alive. Hex Night, I fell asleep thinking about that one clutch you did on Urban Collapse. Hex Night, like the way you turned and headshot that guy mid-jump was illegal. Ava stared at the screen for a moment too long. Then she typed back. Void bloom, I'm alive. Barely. Void bloom, also it wasn't illegal. It was skill. A reply came instantly. Hex Night, LMAO. Hex Night, okay yes skill. Hex Night, are you on tonight? Ava's thumbs hovered over the keyboard. School. Homework. The polite fiction that she had a balanced life. But tonight could be fun again. Void bloom, maybe. Depends how much homework I pretend to do. Hex Night, perfect. Hex Night, I'll be on after dinner. Hex Night, if you show, we dominate. Hex Night, if you don't show, I cry and lose points. Ava's mouth twitched into a smile she did not try to hide. Void bloom, dramatic. Hex Night, accurate. Ava put her phone away and looked out the window, bus rattling over potholes. She could not remember the last time she wanted to get through a school day quickly. At school, the hallways were loud. Locker slammed. Someone's perfume drifted past like a cloud. The sports teams moved in packs, all shoulders and confidence, as if the building belonged to them. Ava kept to the edges. She walked with purpose, eyes down, like she was on a mission. It was easier than looking around and noticing how little she belonged. First period was maths. Ava slid into her seat, pulled out her notebook, and focused on the whiteboard. Numbers were honest. They did not care if you were cool. They did not care if you spoke or stayed quiet. They just existed, waiting to be solved. The teacher droned through a revision sheet. Ava took notes automatically. Her phone buzzed again in her bag, a tiny vibration like a secret. Ava ignored it until the end of class, then checked quickly as she walked to English. Hex Knight, BTW, do you play anything besides Frontline? Hex Knight, or are you like a one-game assassin? Ava smiled as she typed. Void Bloom, I play other stuff. RPG strategy. Some co-op horror when I feel like being scared for no reason. Void Bloom, you? Hex Knight, mostly shooters. Hex Knight, but I got forced into some co-op horror once and screamed so loud my dad thought I was dying. Hex Knight, never again. Ava laughed under her breath, then shoved her phone away again as she reached English. English was the worst. Not because Ava disliked reading. She actually liked stories. She liked the way words could create entire worlds without needing a GPU or a monitor. She disliked the social part. Group discussions. Presentations. The teacher's cheerful insistence on participation. Today, they were doing peer feedback on essays. Ava's shoulders tightened the moment she heard the words swap with a partner. The teacher looked around, smiling like this was fun. Okay. Pair up. Chairs scraped. People turned toward friends. Ava stayed still, pen poised, pretending to reread her essay like she was deeply absorbed. A shadow fell over her desk. Ava looked up, already preparing the polite expression she used when someone accidentally noticed her. It was Ryan Patel, who sat 2 rows over and always had energy like he ran on pure caffeine. Hey, he said. Want to swap? Everyone's pairing up. Ava nodded quickly. Sure. Ryan slid into the chair beside her and handed over his essay. Ava gave him hers. It was fine. Ryan did not make it weird. He did not say, oh, I didn't realize you were here, like note-taking students were furniture. Ava read his essay and wrote feedback. He read hers and hummed thoughtfully. You're really good at this, Ryan said, tapping her page. Like, you actually know what you're doing. Ava shrugged. Compliments made her uncomfortable. They felt like attention, and attention felt like risk. Ryan grinned. Seriously. Do you ever think about studying writing? Ava blinked. No. Why not? Because she didn't want people looking at her. Because she didn't want teachers praising her in front of class. Because she didn't want to stand out. Ava didn't say any of that. I just like games more, she said instead. Ryan's eyes lit up. Oh, you game? Ava hesitated, then nodded. What do you play? Ava kept her face neutral. Stuff. Ryan laughed. That's not an answer. Ava's phone buzzed in her bag again, like it was impatient. Ava's attention snapped to it instinctively. She hated that her brain was doing that. She hated that she wanted to check it. Ryan followed her glance. Oh, you're popular. Ava looked back at him, startled. No. He raised his hands. Okay. I was joking. Ava exhaled. The bell rang. Ava gathered her things quickly. Ryan handed her essay back with neat notes in the margins. For the record, he said, your conclusion is strong. But maybe add one more quote. Ava nodded. Thanks. As she left the classroom, she pulled her phone out in the hallway. Hex Knight, I'm in English right now and I'm dying. Hex Knight, teacher is making us read poetry out loud. Hex Knight, I'd rather get flashed by a sniper. Ava snorted. Void Bloom, poetry is basically sniping with feelings. Hex Knight, what does that even mean? Void Bloom, it means you get hit and you don't see it coming. Hex Knight, okay, well that was actually kinda deep. Hex Knight, who are you? Ava paused with her thumb above the keyboard. Who was she? At school, she was quiet. The girl who did her work and disappeared. Online, she was Void Bloom. The one who clutched impossible rounds. The one who made funny comments. The one who was getting to know someone, slowly, in a way that felt safe. She typed. Void Bloom, a mysterious assassin, remember? Hex Knight, I knew it. Ava slid her phone into her pocket and walked to her next class feeling like she had a secret, and the secret was warm. Lunch was library again. Ava ate quietly at a corner table, laptop open, pretending to review notes. She watched people come and go. Groups laughing. Couples leaning into each other. Seniors who acted like the school was already beneath them. Ava could have been lonely. Sometimes she probably was. But she also felt like she was waiting for her real day to start. Her phone buzzed. Hex Knight, okay, don't roast me, but... Hex Knight, do you ever feel like school is just a place you go until your real life starts? Ava stared at the message. It hit too close. She slowly typed back. Void Bloom, yeah. Void Bloom, like I'm watching everyone else live, and I'm stuck in spectator mode. The reply came slower this time. Hex Knight, that's exactly it. Hex Knight, I didn't know other people felt that. Hex Knight, I feel insane sometimes. Ava's throat tightened, and she hated it. Online conversations were supposed to be shallow. Funny. Safe. Not this. But it was also kind of nice. To be understood without having to explain herself out loud. Void Bloom, you're not insane. Void Bloom, school is a weird bubble. Void Bloom, real life starts whenever you decide it does. A pause. Then. Hex Knight, okay, Void Bloom philosopher. Hex Knight, I'm gonna write that on my hand for my exam. Ava smiled. Void Bloom, please don't. Hex Knight, too late. By the end of the school day, Ava felt like she lived two lives at once. In one, she walked hallways and avoided eye contact. She nodded at teachers, handed in homework, and sat in silence while everyone else talked around her like she was part of the scenery. In the other, she was talking to someone who made her laugh. Someone who listened. Someone who wanted her there. On the bus ride home, she checked her phone again. Hex Knight, I'm thinking we should have a duo name. Hex Knight, like a brand. Hex Knight, for when we crush people. Hex Knight, suggestions? Ava smirked. Void Bloom, no. Hex Knight, rude. Void Bloom, duo names are cringe. Hex Knight, okay, but hear me out. Hex Knight and Void Bloom. Hex Knight, sounds like a law firm. Hex Knight, we sue other teams. Ava laughed, earning a glance from a girl across the aisle. Ava looked out the window quickly, cheeks warming. She typed. Void Bloom, fine. Hex Knight and Void Bloom is kind of funny. Hex Knight, yes. Hex Knight, see, you get it. Hex Knight, we're iconic. Ava got off the bus and walked home with that small smile still stuck on her face. Her mom was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when Ava walked in. Hey, her mom said. How was school? Ava shrugged as she usually did. Fine. Her mom glanced at her, noticing the smile Ava couldn't fully hide. Fine with a smile? That's new. Ava froze. Her mom tilted her head. Did something happen? Ava opened her mouth, then closed it. She moved toward the fridge like she had a mission. Nothing, she said. Just good day. Her mom watched her for a moment longer, then returned to chopping. Okay. Dinner in an hour. Try to do some homework before you disappear into your cave. Ava nodded. I will. It was half true. She did some homework. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She wrote a paragraph for English, solved a few problems for maths. She even read through her notes for science. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Hex Knight. To the way he said he'd be on after dinner. To the way it felt like an invitation, not just to a game, but to a space where she was wanted. At 6:47 p.m., she checked her phone. Hex Knight is online. At 6:48 p.m., an invite popped up on her screen. Ava stared at it. The simple little box that said, Hex Knight has invited you to party. Ava's hands paused over the keyboard. A familiar anxiety crawled in. What if last night was a fluke? What if he was only nice because he was distracted? What if tonight he was in a mood? What if he invited other people, and she ended up being the odd one out? What if she said something dumb? Then she remembered something. Last night, she unmuted. Last night, she risked being heard. And it had been fine. Ava clicked accept. The party chat connected. Void Bloom. Hex Knight's voice came through, bright like he'd been waiting. You came. I was about to start sobbing. Ava smiled, adjusting her headset. I'm here. Thank God. Okay. I warmed up in a deathmatch and got destroyed by a guy named XX Shadow Reaper XX, so I need you to restore my pride. Ava snorted. That name alone should be illegal. Right? He killed me and I swear he did it with the power of cringe. Ava laughed, the sound surprised out of her. They loaded into ranked. The first match was brutal. The enemy team was coordinated, aggressive, and clearly on a win streak. Ava felt her focus sharpen. She moved like water, flowing around corners, snapping aim onto targets. Hex Knight was right there with her. He wasn't as mechanically sharp as she was, but he played smart. He watched angles. He covered flanks. He listened. They lost the first round narrowly. Hex Knight swore under his breath, then laughed. Okay. That's fine. We're just gathering information. Ava's eyebrows rose. Are you pretending we're spies? Absolutely. We are tactical geniuses. Sure. Don't mock the genius, Void Bloom. It's fragile. They adapted. By round 4, they had the enemy team figured out. Ava called rotations, Hex Knight executed them. They started taking point after point, pushing together like they were tied by an invisible string. At the end of the match, they won. Hex Knight let out a loud exhale. Okay, that felt good. Ava's chest buzzed with the win, but also with something else. Something she wasn't naming. Nice teamwork, she said quietly. Nice? Hex Knight repeated, offended. That was legendary. That was art. Ava smiled. Sure. They queued again. Between matches, Hex Knight started talking about random things. I swear, he said, my school cafeteria is trying to poison us. They served pizza today and it tasted like cardboard dipped in regret. Ava laughed. Cardboard is probably an ingredient. I knew it. I should report them. Do it. He made a dramatic sound. Okay, but what if they find me? They won T. You're in witness protection. Void Bloom, are you saying you'd protect me? Ava's fingers stilled on the keyboard for half a second. It depends, she said carefully. Are you annoying? Yes. Then no. He laughed. Fair. They played for hours again. And Ava realized something slowly, like a loading bar creeping forward. She was not just having fun. She was looking forward to him. It was different. Games were usually about escape. About adrenaline. About winning. This felt like connection. At around 10 p.m., they hit a losing streak. 2 matches in a row. A third where a teammate rage quit. Another where the enemy team had a player who seemed to hit impossible shots, as if he could see through walls. Hex Knight groaned. Okay. I hate everyone. Ava leaned back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. We should probably take a break. A break, Hex Knight repeated like it was a foreign concept. Yes. Before you throw your keyboard. He sighed dramatically. Fine. But if we're not playing, what do we do? Ava hesitated. She could log off. Say goodnight. Return to her quiet room. But she didn't want to. She wanted to keep talking. We could just talk, she said, voice softer than she intended. There was a pause in the chat. Then Hex Knight said, quieter too, yeah. I'd like that. Ava's stomach fluttered, and she hated that word for how accurate it was. They stayed in the lobby. Their characters stood idle on screen while the background music looped. Hex Knight cleared his throat. So. Can I ask you something? Ava's fingers curled around her mouse. Depends. He laughed softly. Okay. Fair. What are you like at school? Ava's breath caught. It was such a simple question. And yet it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. What do you mean? She asked. Like, he said, searching for words. Are you popular? Do people know you? Are you one of those people who walks down the hall and everyone asks like, oh my god, it's her? Ava let out a short laugh that was more like air escaping. No. Not even a little? Ava stared at the screen. Her avatar shifted slightly, idle animation. She swallowed. I'm quiet, she said. I keep to myself. Hex Knight didn't respond immediately. Ava's pulse picked up, expecting something. Judgment. Disappointment. A joke. Instead he said, same. Ava blinked. Really? Yeah, he said, and his voice sounded more honest than it had all night. I mean, people see me. But it's not the same as being known, you know? Ava's chest tightened again. She did know. She leaned closer to her mic. Yeah. I know. Hex Knight exhaled. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a role. Like everyone expects me to be a certain person, so I just do it. Ava stared at the screen, heart beating harder. It was strange, hearing this from him. Online, he sounded confident and funny and sure of himself. But now there was something softer under it. Something she hadn't noticed before, or maybe hadn't wanted to. Ava kept her voice steady. What kind of role? He hesitated. Just the version of me everyone else used to. Ava thought of school. Of the groups in the hallway. Of the way certain people moved like they were entitled to space. Of the way others shrank to make room. She imagined Hex Knight as one of those people. Loud. Confident. Popular. But she didn't know. She didn't know anything. You don't have to be that version, she said quietly. Hex Knight laughed, but it wasn't his usual laugh. This one was smaller. Easy to say. Ava stared at her keyboard, then typed something in the chat even though they were on voice. It was easier to say it twice. Void Bloom, you can be different online. That's kind of the point. Hex Knight read it out loud, like he was tasting the words. Yeah. Then he said, you know what I like about you? Ava's stomach dropped in a way that felt dangerous. What? She said, trying to sound normal. You're not fake, he said. Like, you're confident when you're playing, but you're not arrogant. You don't talk over me. You don't treat me like I'm stupid. You don't perform. Ava's throat tightened. She stared at the screen, then down at her hands. She flexed her fingers. Her voice came out quieter. I don't know how to perform. Hex Knight was silent for a moment. Then he said, gently, maybe that's why you're so good. Ava laughed softly. At killing people digitally? At everything, he said, then quickly added, okay, that sounded weird. But you know what I mean. Ava smiled even though he couldn't see it. I know. There was a moment where neither of them spoke. The lobby music filled the gap. Ava didn't want to ruin it, but she also didn't want it to end. Hex Knight cleared his throat again. Okay, I have another question. Ava's fingers tightened on her mouse. You're full of questions. I'm curious, he defended. Also I'm procrastinating life. Ava snorted. Okay. Ask. Hex Knight hesitated. Do you ever feel like you're better online than you are in real life? Ava froze. The question landed like a hit marker. Because yes. Because online, she was fearless. Online, she spoke. Online, she laughed. At school, she was a ghost. Ava swallowed. Sometimes. Hex Knight exhaled slowly. Yeah. Same. Ava blinked. You keep saying that. Well, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice again, maybe we're the same type of person. Ava's heart did that flip again, annoying and persistent. Maybe, she admitted. Hex Knight's tone shifted, playful. Okay. New plan. Ava raised an eyebrow. Oh no. No, it's a good plan. Listen. I'm listening. We keep playing, he said, and we keep talking. And we become unstoppable. Like, everyone should fear us. Ava smiled. That's not a plan. That's just ego. It's a vision, he corrected. Also, one more thing. Ava waited. Hex Knight's voice softened, just a little. I'm glad you accepted my friend request. Ava's throat tightened again. She hated that her emotions were reacting like this. It made her feel weak. It made her feel exposed. But she also didn't want to lie. Me too, she said. Hex Knight laughed softly. Cool. Good. Great. Awesome. Ava smiled. You're weird. Thank you. That's my brand. They queued for unranked after that, just to play without pressure. They tried stupid strategies. They laughed when it failed. Ava found herself talking more, filling silences without panic. She told him about a co-op horror game that had made her scream once. He demanded the story. She refused. He begged dramatically. She relented. He laughed so hard he started coughing. At 11:30, Ava's mom knocked on the door. Ava yanked one side of her headset off. Yeah? Bedtime, her mom said, not unkindly. It's a school night. Ava glanced at the time and winced. Okay. Her mom's eyes flicked to the screen, to the headset, to Ava's expression. Are you playing with friends? Ava hesitated. Yeah. Her mom smiled gently. Good. Just don't forget to sleep, okay? Ava nodded. Okay. When her mom left, Ava put the headset back on. Was that your mom? Hex Knight asked. Yeah, Ava said. She's telling me to sleep. Hex Knight groaned. Parents are the enemy. Ava laughed. She's right. She is, he admitted reluctantly. I should probably sleep too. They both lingered anyway. Neither of them wanted to be the first to go. Finally, Ava said, Good night, Hex Knight. Night, Void Bloom, he replied. Then, like he was thinking out loud, he added, Hey. Same time tomorrow? Ava's heart warmed. Yeah, she said. Same time. Cool, he said. Don't let school kill you. You too. She disconnected and sat there in the quiet, headset resting around her neck. Her room felt different now. Not because anything had changed physically. The same posters. The same stack of books. The same glow from her monitor. But the air felt less heavy. Ava lay in bed and stared at the ceiling again, just like she had that morning. Her phone buzzed one last time. A message from Hex Knight. Hex Knight, BTW, if we're a law firm our slogan should be, we win cases and matches. Hex Knight, good night Void Bloom. Ava smiled into her pillow. Void Bloom, good night, Hex Knight. She put her phone down. And for the first time in a long time, she fell asleep thinking about someone else's laugh instead of her own loneliness. Ava started recognizing the sound of his voice before she recognized anything else. It happened in small, stupid moments. When someone laughed in the hallway and her brain flickered, just for a second. When a guy in her class complained about homework with that same half-dramatic tone. When a voice over the loudspeaker sounded vaguely similar and her stomach did that annoying little drop. It was ridiculous. Hex Knight was just a voice in her headset. A username. A laugh filtered through digital static. He could be anyone. But somehow, her brain had decided he was someone. The next few days blurred together in a way Ava wasn't used to. School still existed. Classes still happened. Teachers still handed out worksheets and talked about exams like they were the most important thing in the world. But there was now a countdown running quietly in the back of her mind. Time until she got home, time until she logged on, time until she heard his voice again. They played almost every night. Sometimes ranked. Sometimes unranked. Sometimes they just sat in the lobby and talked while their characters stood idle like they were waiting for instructions. Hex Knight told her about his dog, a golden retriever named Max who ate socks and once tried to steal an entire roast chicken off the counter. Ava told him about her cat, Pixel, who hated everyone except her and once knocked over her monitor mid-game out of pure spite. They started using each other's real names. Not immediately. It happened accidentally. Hex Knight slipped up first. Okay, so my dad said. He stopped. Wait. That sounds weird. I just realized I've never told you my name. Ava's heart had jumped into her throat. It felt like crossing some invisible line. Yeah, she said quietly. You haven't tea. There was a pause. I'm Mason, he said. Don't laugh. It's boring. Ava smiled. It suits you. How would you know? She hesitated. It just does. Another pause. Then his laugh, softer this time. Okay, mysterious. And you? He asked. I can't keep calling you Void Bloom forever. Ava swallowed. Saying her name out loud to him felt different. More real. More dangerous. Ava, she said. Ava, Mason repeated, like he was testing it. That's actually really cool. It's just a name. No, he said. It's a good name. She didn't know why that made her chest feel warm. After that, something shifted. They still used their gamer tags, but sometimes he said Ava instead of Void Bloom, and every time he did, her focus stuttered just a little. He never pushed for more. Never asked for photos. Never asked for social media. Never asked where she lived or what school she went to. And Ava was grateful for that, because she wasn't sure she was ready for that kind of reality. Online was safe. Online, she didn't have to worry about how she looked when she smiled. She didn't have to worry about her posture or her clothes or whether her voice sounded weird. She didn't have to worry about being seen. She was already heard. At school, though, things started to feel off. Not bad. Just strange. It started in PE. Ava had always hated PE. Not because she couldn't do it, exactly, but because it was the one place in school where invisibility was impossible. You had to exist physically. You had to move. You had to be perceived. They were doing basketball drills, divided into teams. Ava stood near the edge of the court, waiting to be assigned, already hoping she'd get put with people who wouldn't care if she faded into the background. Ava. She looked up, startled. The coach was pointing at her. You're with Blue Team. She nodded and jogged over. Blue Team consisted of 3 girls she vaguely recognized and 2 guys from the senior basketball team. One of them was Mason Reed. Ava froze for half a second. Mason Reed was noticeable. Not in a dramatic, movie star way. Just in the way some people naturally drew attention without trying. He was tall, broad-shouldered, confident in his own body. He wore his uniform like it had been tailored for him, sleeves rolled up casually, hair slightly messy in a way that looked intentional. He was also, unfortunately, exactly the kind of guy Ava avoided. Not because he was mean. She didn't know him well enough to label him anything. But because he existed firmly in the category of people who had a life she did not belong to. He glanced at her, nodded politely. Hey. Ava nodded back. Hi. That was it. They didn't talk again for the rest of the drill. Ava passed the ball when she had to. She avoided eye contact. She stayed on the edges of the court, doing the minimum required to avoid getting yelled at. Mason was loud in the way athletes were loud. Calling plays, encouraging teammates, laughing when someone missed an easy shot. Nice one, Jess. Good defense. Okay, reset. Ava found herself weirdly irritated by him. Not because he was doing anything wrong. But because his voice sounded familiar. She tried to shake it off. A lot of guys sounded the same. It meant nothing. Still, when PE ended, she felt unsettled in a way she couldn't explain. That night, when she logged on, Mason was already waiting in the lobby. There you are, he said. I thought you ditched me. Ava smiled despite herself. I was in PE. Oh God, he said dramatically. My condolences. Ava laughed. Do you have PE too? Yeah. Worst part of my day. It's like a survival game but with whistles. Ava paused. What sport do you do? She asked. There was a beat of hesitation. Just a fraction. Basketball, he said. You? Ava blinked at the screen. That's funny, she said slowly. We had basketball today. Oh yeah, he said. Any good? She thought of Mason Reed's easy confidence on the court. The way he moved like he belonged there. Yeah, she said. Some people were really into it. Mason laughed. Couldn't he be me? Ava frowned. You just said you play basketball. Yeah, but I mean at school. It's different. Different how? She didn't ask. She didn't want to push. She didn't want to break the easy rhythm they had. So she let it go. But the feeling stayed. Over the next week, it kept happening. Little overlaps. Mason online complained about a maths teacher who gave surprise quizzes. Ava had the same teacher. Mason online mentioned a school fundraiser with terrible music. Ava had walked past that fundraiser that same day. Mason online said his dog Max had stolen someone's lunch from his bag. Ava overheard two guys in the hallway talking about a dog doing exactly that. It was probably coincidence. It had to be. Lots of people went to school. Lots of people had dogs. Lots of people played basketball. But Ava's brain had started drawing lines between dots, and once it started, it was hard to stop. The worst moment came on Thursday. She was walking to her locker when she heard laughter echo down the hallway. Mason Reed's laughter. She froze mid-step. Because she recognized it. Not fully. Not consciously. But something deep and instinctive inside her went that's him. Her heart kicked hard in her chest. She turned slowly, watching him stand with a group of his friends near the vending machines. He was talking animatedly, hands moving as he spoke, clearly telling a story. And then he trips over the chair and he made a dramatic falling motion. Absolutely eats it. His friends laughed. Ava's stomach twisted. It wasn't the same. But it was close. Too close. She stood there for a moment too long, staring. Then Mason Reed glanced up and caught her looking. Their eyes met. Ava panicked. She looked away instantly, cheeks burning, and pretended to rummage through her locker even though she had no idea what she was looking for. Her heart was racing. Don't be stupid, she told herself. You're projecting. You want it to be him because it would make the story more interesting. That's all. Online romance brain. She slammed her locker shut and walked away, trying to shake the feeling. That night, she logged on late. She stayed back at school for a group project and then helped her mom with dinner. By the time she finally sat down at her desk, it was almost 9. Mason wasn't online. For the first time in over a week. Ava felt a stupid wave of disappointment. She checked again 10 minutes later. Still offline. She opened the game anyway, playing a few solo matches, but it wasn't the same. Without Mason, the game felt empty. The wins didn't hit as hard. The losses felt pointless. She exited after 2 matches and sat staring at her desktop, feeling restless. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mason. Mason, sorry disappeared. Mason, got stuck at practice. Mason, you on? Ava's heart lifted instantly. Ava, yeah. Just got on. Mason, invite me before I die of boredom. She sent the invite. He joined almost immediately. There she is, he said. I swear, my day instantly got better. Ava smiled. Dramatic. Accurate, he corrected. Practice was brutal. Coach thinks we're training for the apocalypse. Ava paused. Basketball practice? Yeah. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Do you like it? She asked. There was a short silence. Sometimes, Mason said. I mean, I'm good at it. It's just expected. Ava frowned. Expected by who? Everyone, he said lightly. Teachers. Friends. Parents. Me, probably. That answer felt familiar. Like something he'd said before. Ava leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling for a moment. Do you ever wish people expected different things from you? She asked. Mason didn't reply immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter. Yeah, he said. All the time. Ava's chest tightened. They played in silence for a few minutes, both focused, both thinking. Finally, Mason spoke again. Can I ask you something kind of personal? Ava's heart skipped. Okay. Do you ever feel like the version of you online is more real than the version at school? Ava's breath caught. He'd asked almost the same thing before. Yes, she said softly. I do. Mason exhaled slowly. Me too. Ava swallowed. Then why don't you just be that version all the time? There was a long pause. Long enough that she thought he might not answer. Because, Mason said finally, people already decided who I am. Ava stared at her screen. So what happens if they're wrong, she asked. Mason laughed, but it wasn't he happy. Then I disappoint everyone. Ava felt something ache in her chest. She thought of Mason Reed at school. The jock. The confident guy with friends and laughter and a place in every room. She thought of Mason online. The one who talked about feeling trapped. The one who asked deep questions at midnight. The one who made her feel understood. They felt like two different people. And somehow maybe the same. Maybe, Ava said quietly, they're already wrong. Mason didn't reply straight away. When he did, his voice was soft. You always say things like that. She smiled. Like what? Like you see things clearer than everyone else. Ava laughed under her breath. That's not true. It is, he insisted. You make me think. Ava's stomach flipped in that dangerous way again. That's probably a bad sign, she said. Yeah, he replied. But I kind of like it. There was a moment where neither of them spoke. The game music filled the silence again. Ava felt her heart beating too fast, too loud, like it was trying to say something she wasn't ready to admit. Ava, Mason said suddenly. Yeah? Do you think we'd get along in real life? The question hit her like a shock. She stared at the screen, fingers frozen. In real life. The words felt heavy. She thought of school. Of lockers and hallways and PE and Mason Reed laughing with his friends. She thought of herself, hiding behind hoodies and library tables and silence. She thought of the space between them. I don't know, she said honestly. I think maybe. Mason laughed softly. That's not very confident. Ava smiled sadly. Neither am I. Mason was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I think we would. Ava's heart skipped. Why? Because, he said simply, you're my favorite person to talk to. That's usually a good sign. Ava's throat tightened. She looked at the clock on her screen. 11:48 p.m. Too late. Too real. Too emotional. Mason, she said quietly. Yeah? I'm glad I met you. There was a pause. Then his voice, softer than she'd ever heard it. Me too, Ava. More than you know. Ava leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. She didn't know what was happening. She didn't know where this was going. But somewhere deep inside her, a truth was forming. The voice she was falling for online already existed in her real world. By Monday, Ava had convinced herself she was being dramatic. Mason Reed existed at school. Mason Hexknight existed online. They shared a name, sure, but Mason was a common name. The voice similarity was probably coincidence mixed with sleep deprivation and the fact that Ava had started listening for it. That was all. Still, Ava found herself playing a new kind of game. Not Frontline Protocol. A different one. A quiet, obsessive one she didn't tell anyone about. She started noticing Mason Reed. Not in the way other girls noticed him, with whispered comments and glances that lingered too long. Ava noticed him like she was collecting data, building a case. When she walked into school, she listened for his laugh. When she passed the gym, she watched for his movements, the way he carried himself like he never had to wonder if he belonged. When she sat in the library at lunch, she tracked the rhythm of the day and when the athletes filtered past, loud and hungry and careless. It was stupid. It was pointless. It was also impossible to stop. On Monday, she saw him in the hallway near the office, talking to a teacher. He was holding a basketball under one arm, uniform slightly untucked, tie loosened like rules were optional. The teacher said something and Mason grinned, that same easy, charming grin Ava had seen 100 times on 100 different guys. He laughed. Ava's stomach tightened. It was the same laugh. Not identical. Not perfectly matched, but close enough that Ava felt it in her chest, like a vibration. She kept walking, eyes forward, pretending she hadn't noticed anything, pretending her heartbeat wasn't suddenly too loud. In maths, Ava sat 2 seats behind Mason Reed. She never realized that before. Or maybe she had, but she never cared. Now she noticed everything. The way he tapped his pen when he was bored, the way he leaned back in his chair like he trusted it not to collapse, the way he sighed dramatically when the teacher announced a surprise quiz. Ava's phone buzzed in her bag. She ignored it. She couldn't check messages in class without getting caught, and she wasn't in the mood to be noticed for anything. Still, her mind flickered to Mason online. I'm in maths right now and I'm dying. Ava stared at Mason Reed's back. He shifted and muttered something under his breath. She couldn't hear it, but she saw his shoulders lift slightly in the motion of a laugh. Ava looked down at her worksheet, but the numbers blurred for a moment. When class ended, Mason stood up and stretched like he'd just survived something heroic. He turned to talk to one of his friends, laughing again, then slung his bag over his shoulder. Ava stayed seated until the room cleared. Silence was easier. She walked to her next class with her hoodie up, earbuds in, no music. She passed Mason in the hallway. He didn't look at her. Of course he didn't. Ava wasn't someone people like him looked at. She should have felt relieved. Instead, there was a strange, sharp disappointment that made her feel stupid. At lunch, Ava went to the library like always. She ate quietly, scrolling aimlessly through her phone until she found herself opening the game app. Mason is offline. That wasn't unusual. It was the middle of the day. He was always offline during school. She stared at it anyway, thumb hovering over the message icon. She didn't want to message him at school. It felt like crossing another line. It felt like letting the 2 rooms of her life touch. Still, she typed, then deleted, then typed again. Ava, how's your day going? She stared at it for a full 10 seconds. Then she sent it before she could overthink it. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She put the phone down and pretended to read her English notes, but her eyes kept flicking back to the screen. No reply. She told herself to relax. He was in class. He'd respond later. But the fact that she reached out first, during school, made her feel exposed in a way she couldn't explain. It also made her feel brave. When the final bell rang, Ava walked out with the crowd, head down, moving like she always did. In the parking lot, she saw Mason Reed again. He was standing near the sports bus with his teammates, laughing. Someone tossed a basketball toward him without looking. Mason caught it easily, spun it on his finger, then bounced it once and passed it back. Ava couldn't help it. She watched. A car honked. Someone shouted. The world moved loudly around her. Mason Reed looked like he belonged in it. Ava turned away and walked toward the bus stop, stomach tight. The bus ride home felt longer than usual. Her phone buzzed as she stepped off the bus. A message notification. From Mason. Ava's heart jumped. Mason, sorry I'm late. Mason, day was chaos. Mason, I'm good though. Mason, how about you? Ava exhaled slowly, relief washing through her like she'd been holding her breath without realizing. Ava, same. School is school. Ava, you on tonight? A reply came quickly. Mason, yeah. Mason, might be a bit later. Mason, got practice. Mason, but I'll message when I'm free. Ava stared at the word practice. Basketball. She swallowed. Ava, okay. I'll be on. She shoved her phone into her pocket and walked home, trying not to think about the way her brain insisted on making connections. At home, she did homework with half her attention. She ate dinner with her mom and nodded at the right moments. She fed Pixel, who rubbed against her leg like she owned Ava's entire existence. At 8:46 p.m., Ava checked the app again. Mason is online. A second later, an invite popped up. Ava clicked accept. His voice came through instantly, bright and familiar. Ava, he said, like saying her name was his favorite thing. Finally. Ava smiled before she could stop herself. Finally? I've been thinking about gaming all day, he admitted. Like a responsible senior. Ava laughed softly. Very responsible. I deserve an award, Mason said. Okay. First things first. Did you miss me? Ava's fingers stilled on her keyboard. She should have said something sarcastic. Something safe. Something that didn't admit anything. But she was tired of being safe. A little, she said quietly. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just surprised. Then Mason's laugh, softer than usual. Okay. Good. Ava's stomach fluttered again. Did you miss me? She asked, trying to sound casual. Mason didn't hesitate. Yeah. Ava stared at the lobby screen. Her avatar shifted in idle animation. She couldn't see him, but she could hear the smile in his voice. They queued for ranked. The first match was smooth. They moved together like they'd been playing as a duo for years instead of a couple of weeks. Ava called rotations. Mason covered her blind spots. When she took a risk, he followed without question. They won. The second match was harder, but they pulled through. The third match started badly. A teammate refused to cooperate, running off alone and dying repeatedly. The enemy team had a sniper who seemed to predict their every move. Ava felt frustration building, sharp and hot. Okay, Mason said, calm. We can still win. Ava, can you flank left and draw their sniper's attention? I'll push point with smoke. Ava blinked. He was leading. Not bossy. Not arrogant. Just confident and clear. Yeah, she said. On it. She flanked left, moving quietly, using cover. She drew the sniper's shots, then slipped behind him and took him out with a clean headshot. Mason pushed the point. They turned the game around. When they won, Mason whooped loudly. Ava, that was disgusting. Ava laughed, adrenaline buzzing. It was necessary. It was art, Mason insisted. You are an artist of violence. Ava rolled her eyes, smiling. You're dramatic. Accurate, he said, and she could hear the grin. They played another match, then took a break. This had become their routine, grind, break, talk, grind again. Tonight, they stayed in the lobby longer than usual. Mason's voice sounded tired. You okay? Ava asked quietly. Mason exhaled. Yeah. Just long day. Ava hesitated. Practice? Mason laughed once, but it lacked humor. Yeah. Ava leaned back in her chair, thinking of Mason Reed at school, spinning the basketball on his finger like it was part of him. Do you like basketball? She asked gently. There was a pause. I like parts of it, Mason admitted. I like playing. I like winning. I like the feeling when everything clicks. But I hate the expectations around it. Ava's chest tightened. Expectations like what? She asked softly. Mason sighed. Like if I have a bad game, it's not just a bad game. It's like I've disappointed a whole audience. People treat it like I owe them something. Ava swallowed. The way he said it sounded so familiar, like he'd been carrying it a long time. Do people at your school treat you differently because of it? She asked. Mason made a small sound. Yeah. I mean, I guess. They assume stuff about me. Ava stared at her screen. Like what? She asked, voice careful. That I'm confident. That I'm always okay. That I'm the guy who has everything figured out. Ava's fingers tightened on her mouse. Mason Reed at school. Confident. Always okay. The guy who belonged. The voice in her headset. The guy who asked deep questions at midnight and admitted he felt trapped. Ava's heart beat too fast. She forced herself to breathe. Do you want them to see you differently? She asked. Mason was quiet for a moment. Then he said, softly, I don't know. Sometimes I think if they saw the real me, they wouldn't like him. Ava's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. So she said the truth. I do like him, she said quietly. There was a long pause. When Mason spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Ava, he said. You don't even know me. Ava swallowed. I know you more than most people probably do. Mason breathed out slowly. That's terrifying. Ava smiled faintly. It is? Yeah, he said, and his voice was warm now, teasing to cover the vulnerability. Because what if you decide I'm annoying and you uninstall me from your life? Ava laughed softly. That's not how people work. It should be, Mason said. Life would be easier. You get one warning, then uninstall. Ava smiled, then hesitated, then asked the question that had been sitting in her chest all day. Mason, she said carefully. Yeah? What school do you go to? The silence that followed was immediate. Ava's heartbeat slammed in her ears. She stared at the screen, wishing she could rewind the last 5 seconds. She decrossed the line. She de-opened the door between the two rooms. Mason didn't answer straight away. When he did, his voice was light, but she could hear something else underneath it. Caution. Why? He asked. Ava's throat tightened. She could lie. Say she was just curious. Say she wanted to see if he lived nearby. But Ava didn't like lying. Just wondering, she said quietly. Because some things you've said sound familiar. Mason was silent again. Then he laughed softly, but it didn't reach his eyes, not that she could see his eyes. Ava, he said gently, we promised we wouldn't make this weird. Ava's cheeks burned. I'm sorry, she said quickly. You're right. Forget I asked. Mason exhaled. No, he said, voice softer. It's okay. I like what we have. I don't want it to get messed up. Ava's chest ached. Me too, she admitted. Mason was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I go to a school in the city. That's all I'm saying for now. Ava swallowed. That could be any school. It meant nothing. It also meant everything. Okay, she said, forcing her voice steady. That's fair. Mason's tone brightened again, like he was trying to patch the moment. Okay, he said. Enough heavy stuff. We need to end the night on a win, otherwise I'll spiral. Ava laughed. Dramatic. Accurate, he replied, and the familiar teasing slipped back into place like armor. They queued for one more ranked match. They won. When the scoreboard popped up, Mason said, satisfied, there. Now I can sleep without thinking about failure. Ava smiled, but her mind wasn't on the win. It was on the question she asked. It was on the way he hesitated. It was on the way her world suddenly felt smaller, like he was closer than he should be. When they finally logged off, Mason said, Night, Ava. Night, she replied. She lay in bed afterward, staring at the ceiling. She could still hear his voice in her head, the warmth of it, the softness when he said her name. Ava closed her eyes. If he was really at her school, if Mason Reed was really Mason online, then everything would change. And Ava wasn't sure if she wanted that. Because it would either become real. Or it would fall apart. Either way, she wouldn't be able to hide behind the headset forever. Ava dreamed about his voice. Not his face. Not his body. Just his voice, echoing in a dark room, saying her name over and over like it meant something important she couldn't quite remember when she woke up. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, heart already beating too fast. Mason. The name felt heavier now. Less abstract. Less safe. She rolled onto her side and checked her phone. No messages. It was stupid how quickly disappointment settled in her chest, like she expected him to be there waiting, frozen in time until she woke up. School felt different after that question. What school do you go to? She replayed the moment over and over in her head. The way his voice had shifted. The hesitation. The careful answer. A school in the city. That described half the schools within an hour's radius. It meant nothing. It also meant he hadn't said no. Ava pulled on her uniform and hoodie and tied her hair up with more force than necessary. She didn't look in the mirror at all this time. On the bus, she found herself scanning faces without meaning to. Listening for his laugh again. Watching the way people spoke, the way their mouths moved, the way their voices sounded when they joked with friends. Every male voice felt like a maybe. It was exhausting. At school, she tried to be normal. She sat in class. She took notes. She answered when teachers called on her. She laughed politely at Ryan's jokes in English. But part of her attention was always elsewhere, tuned to a frequency only she could hear. At lunch, she was in the library when she heard it again. That laugh. Not through a headset this time. Not filtered through static. Real. Close. Ava froze mid-step. She turned slowly. Mason Reed was standing near the doorway, talking to two of his teammates. One of them was holding a tray of food, the other complaining loudly about a test. "And I'm telling you," Mason said, laughing, "there is no way I failed. I literally guessed half of it." His laugh hit her like a shock to the chest. Ava's breath caught. This time, it wasn't just similar. It was the same. Her brain screamed at her to stop, to look away, to not do this to herself. But she couldn't. She stood there, staring, heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape her ribs. Mason Reed turned slightly, shifting his weight, and for a split second his eyes met hers. Recognition flickered across his face. Not romantic. Not dramatic. Just polite. "Oh, hey," he said. Ava's mouth went dry. "Hi," she said automatically. There was a brief, awkward pause. Mason smiled, friendly but distant. "You're in my maths class, right?" Ava nodded. "Yeah." "Cool," he said, smiling at her. "Yeah," Ava said quietly. "Well, see you later." He nodded and walked away. Just like that. No spark. No realization. No slow motion moment. Just reality. Ava stood there for a second longer, then sat down at her usual table, hands trembling slightly. That was him. She was sure of it now. Not because of the name. Not because of the basketball. Because of the way he laughed. Because of the way her body had recognized it before her mind could argue. Mason Reed was Mason. Hex Knight. The person she talked to every night. The person who made her feel seen. The person who had just walked away from her without a second thought. Ava's chest ached. Not because he'd been rude. But because he'd been normal. At school, she was invisible to him. Online, she was everything. The difference hurt more than she expected. That night, Ava logged on late. Later than usual. She sat at her desk for a full 5 minutes before even opening the game, just staring at the desktop like it might give her answers. Finally, she launched it. Mason is online. Her heart jumped, then sank. Of course he was. He always was. She stared at his username. Mason. Not Mason Reed. Not the jock from school. Just Mason. The one who laughed at her jokes. The one who talked about feeling trapped. The one who said she was his favorite person to talk to. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. He hadn't invited her yet. That was new. Usually he invited her the second he came online. Ava waited. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. Nothing. Her chest tightened. You're overthinking, she told herself. He is probably in a match. Or talking to someone. Or just hasn't he noticed yet. She tried to breathe through the feeling. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Mason. Mason, hey. Mason, sorry I'm late. Mason, got distracted. Ava stared at it. Distracted by what? By who? Her fingers felt heavy as she typed. Ava, it's okay. I just got on. A few seconds passed. Then an invite popped up. Ava clicked accept. His voice filled her headset. Ava, he said, warm and familiar. Hi. Her chest tightened painfully. Hi, she said softly. You okay? Mason asked immediately. You sound off. Ava swallowed. She could lie. She could say she was tired. Or stressed. Or that school had been annoying. Or she could tell the truth. I think I saw you today, she said quietly. The silence on the other end was instant. So sharp it almost hurt. What? Mason said. At school, Ava continued, heart racing. I think I saw you. There it was. The line she couldn't uncross. Mason didn't speak for a long moment. When he did, his voice was careful. Too careful. Ava, he said gently, we already talked about this. I know, she said quickly. I'm not trying to push. It's just your voice. Your laugh. Your name. It all lines up. Mason exhaled slowly. You're projecting, he said. Your brain wants a story. Ava's hand shook slightly. Maybe, she admitted. But what if I'm not? Another long pause. Ava's breath caught. Mason was silent. The lobby music played softly in the background, completely unaware that Ava's entire world was tilting. Mason let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Ava didn't laugh. She couldn't. Mason's voice changed. Not dramatic. Not angry. Just quieter. Ava, he said, what do you want from this? Ava's throat tightened. She hadn't thought that far. I don't know, she admitted. I feel like I know you. And I feel like you don't know me at all. Mason didn't reply immediately. When he did, his voice was low. That's because online is different. Ava swallowed. Is it? Yes, he said firmly. Online, we choose what parts of ourselves to show. Real life doesn't give you that control. Ava stared at the screen. So which version of you is real? She asked quietly. Another silence. Longer this time. When Mason spoke again, his voice was soft. Both, he said. And neither. Ava's chest ached. Do you want me to stop talking to you? She asked, barely above a whisper. Mason's reply was immediate. No. The certainty in his voice made her heart stutter. Then what? She asked. Mason sighed. Then we keep doing what we're doing. Talking. Playing. Not overthinking it. Ava laughed softly, but it sounded broken. I don't know how not to. Mason was quiet for a moment. Then he said, gently, Ava, I like you. I really do. But I'm scared that if we drag real life into this, it'll ruin what we have. Ava closed her eyes. Because that was exactly what she was afraid of too. But what if real life is the point? She asked. Mason didn't answer straight away. When he did, his voice was honest in a way that scared her. Then I might lose you. Ava's chest tightened painfully. Why? She asked. Because you might realize I'm not who you think I am, Mason said. And I might realize you're different in ways I don't know how to handle. Ava opened her eyes, staring at the glowing screen. So, I'm just pretending I don't know, she asked. Mason exhaled slowly. For now, he said. Yeah. Ava nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Okay, she whispered. They queued for a match after that. But something had shifted. They still played well. Still won. Still joked. But there was a tension under everything now. Like they were both avoiding stepping on a crack in the floor that could break something important. At the end of the night, Ava said, Good night, Mason. Night, Ava, he replied. His voice sounded tired. She lay in bed afterward, staring at the ceiling, heart aching in a way she never felt before. She found him. And she still couldn't have him. At school the next day, she saw Mason read again. He was laughing with his friends near the lockers. For the first time, she didn't look away. She watched him. Not with a crush. Not with fear. But with a strange, quiet sadness. Because she knew him. And he had no idea. Ava stopped sleeping properly. Not in the dramatic, insomnia way where she stared at the ceiling until sunrise. It was worse than that. She slept, but her mind never really shut off. It hovered somewhere between dreams and thoughts, replaying the same scenes over and over. Mason's laugh in the hallway. Mason's voice in her headset. The way he said I like you like it was both a gift and a warning. By Wednesday, she felt like she was living in two overlapping realities that refused to line up. At school, Mason Reed existed. He was loud in the corridors, easy with teachers, constantly surrounded by people. He high-fived his teammates, flirted casually with girls who leaned too close, complained about tests like they were personal attacks. Online, Mason existed. He was thoughtful. Curious. sometimes insecure in ways he never showed in public. He asked her questions about her favorite games, her favorite books, her favorite places to exist when the world felt too loud. Ava didn't know which version was real anymore. Or worse. She suspected they both were. In English, they were put into the same group. Ava stared at the seating chart like it had personally betrayed her. Group discussion on modern literature. 4 students per group. Ava, Ryan, a girl named Sophie, and Mason Reed. Mason looked at the chart, then at Ava, then smiled politely. "Oh," he said. "Hey again." Ava nodded. "Hi." Sophie grinned. "This is a good group. At least Ryan actually does the work." Ryan laughed. "Rude but fair." Mason pulled his chair closer to the table, sitting directly across from Ava. She felt it instantly. The awareness. Not attraction exactly. Not yet. Just the unbearable knowledge that this person knew her voice intimately and had no idea. The teacher launched into instructions. Ava tried to focus, but every time Mason spoke, her brain short-circuited. His voice was the same. Slightly deeper in person. Less filtered. But the rhythm was identical. The pauses. The way he said yeah when he agreed. The way he laughed under his breath when he found something genuinely funny. Ava gripped her pen harder than necessary. "So the main theme is identity," Sophie said, flipping through her book. "Like, who you are versus who people think you are." Ava's stomach twisted. Ryan nodded. "Yeah, especially with social media and stuff." Mason leaned forward, elbows on the table. "It's kind of messed up, though. Like, you can spend years building a version of yourself and then realize it's not even you." Ava's breath caught. She stared at him. Mason glanced at her, surprised by the intensity of her gaze. "What?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "Just that's a good point." Mason smiled. "Thanks." Ava felt like screaming. Because that sentence could have come straight out of one of their late-night conversations. Because she said almost the exact same thing to him online. Because he was sitting right in front of her, saying it again, and still didn't he know. They worked through the discussion, but Ava barely heard any of it. Her brain was too busy making connections. When the bell rang, Ryan packed up quickly. "Same time tomorrow for the presentation?" he asked. Sophie nodded. "Yeah." Mason looked at Ava. "You good with that?" Ava nodded. "Yeah." Mason smiled again. "Cool." He stood up and walked away with Sophie and Ryan, already mid-conversation. Ava stayed seated for a moment, heart pounding. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to stand up and say, "It's me. It's Ava. It's Void Bloom. It's the person you talk to every night." She didn't. Because she remembered his voice. "I'm scared it'll ruin what we have." That night, Ava didn't log on immediately. She sat on her bed with her laptop open, staring at the login screen like it was daring her. She checked her phone. No messages yet. He usually messaged first now. The thought made her chest tighten. At 8:32 p.m., her phone buzzed. "Mason, you on?" Ava exhaled slowly. "Ava, yeah. Just logging in." She accepted the invite. His voice filled her headset. "Hey," he said softly. "How was your day?" Ava hesitated. She could lie. Or she could test something. "I was in a group project today," she said. "With someone interesting." Mason chuckled. "Oh? Interesting how?" Ava swallowed. "He said some things that reminded me of you." There was a brief pause. "Good things, I hope," Mason said lightly. "Yeah," Ava said. "Too similar, actually." Mason was quiet. "Ava," he said carefully, "are we doing the real-life thing again?" Ava closed her eyes. "I'm not trying to," she said. It's hard not to notice." Mason sighed. "I know. I get it. I just don't want to become a mystery you're trying to solve." Ava's chest ached. "You already are," she said softly. Mason laughed under his breath. "That sounds unhealthy." "Probably," Ava admitted. They loaded into a match, but Ava's focus was off. She missed shots she never missed. Her reactions were slower. Her movements less confident. "Hey," Mason said gently, "you okay? You're usually way sharper than this." Ava bit her lip. "I'm just tired." Mason didn't push. "We can play unranked if you want." "Yeah," she said. "That might be better." They switched modes. The stakes lowered, but the tension didn't. After one match, they stayed in the lobby again. Mason's voice sounded hesitant. "Can I ask you something kind of stupid?" he said. Ava smiled faintly. "That's your brand." He laughed softly. "Okay, rude. But fair." Then he grew serious. "If you found out the guy you think is me actually was me, would you be mad?" Ava's heart slammed against her ribs. She stared at the screen. "No," she said honestly. "I think I'd be relieved." There was a long pause. "Why?" Mason asked. "Because," Ava said, choosing her words carefully, "it would mean I'm not imagining the connection. It would mean it's real in both worlds." Mason didn't speak for several seconds. When he did, his voice was low. "And if it is real," he said, "what would you want to happen?" Ava's throat tightened. She thought of the hallway. The cafeteria. The way he smiled politely like she was just another student. She thought of the headset. The late nights. The way he said she was his favorite person to talk to. "I want you to see me," she said quietly. "Not just hear me." Mason inhaled sharply. The sound went straight through her. "Ava," he said, "I do see you." Her heart broke a little. "You see a version of me," she said. "The one I built for you." Mason was silent. Then he said, softly, "I think that version is closer to the real you than you think." Ava blinked, eyes stinging. "Then why is the real me invisible to you at school?" she whispered. The question hung between them. Mason didn't have an answer. Because the truth was too big. Because admitting it would mean admitting everything. "I don't ignore you on purpose," Mason said finally. "I just don't notice people properly. Not when I'm in that space." Ava let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "That space is my entire life." Mason's voice softened. "That's not fair." "Neither is this," Ava replied gently. Another silence. Long, heavy. Honest. Then Mason said something that changed everything. "Do you want me to notice you?" Ava's breath caught. "Yes," she said without hesitation. There was no point pretending anymore. "Yes," she said again. "I want you to look at me and know it's me." Mason exhaled slowly. "Okay," he said. "Just that." "Okay." Ava's heart pounded. "Okay what?" she asked. Mason's voice was steady, but she could hear nerves under it. "Okay," he said, "then I'll try. In real life. I'll actually pay attention. I'll stop treating school like autopilot. I'll open my eyes and try to see." Ava stared at the screen. "You don't have to do that," she said quickly. "I don't want to force anything." Mason laughed softly. "You're not forcing me. I'm choosing it." Ava swallowed. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow," Mason said. "I'll start tomorrow." Ava's stomach flipped. Tomorrow meant hallways. Lockers. Eye contact. Reality. "Mason," she whispered. "Yeah? What if you don't like me in real life?" Mason was quiet for a moment. Then he said something so simple it hurt. "Then I'll deal with it. But I don't think that's going to happen." Ava's eyes stung. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she just nodded even though he couldn't see it. They didn't play any more that night. They just talked. About nothing. About everything. About how weird it felt to be standing on the edge of something neither of them could fully see yet. Before logging off, Mason said, "Ava? Yeah? No matter what happens tomorrow, I don't regret meeting you." Ava smiled softly, tears blurring her vision. "Me neither," she said. When she lay in bed that night, Ava felt something new. Not just longing. Not just fear. Hope. Because tomorrow, the two versions of him might finally start to become one. And maybe, hopefully, so would she. Ava barely ate breakfast. Not because she wasn't hungry, exactly. More because her stomach was full of nerves, twisted so tightly around themselves that food felt like an intrusion. Her mum noticed, of course. "You're quiet today," she said, sliding a plate of toast across the table. "Big test or something?" Ava shook her head. "Just tired." It wasn't a lie. She was tired of thinking. Tired of wondering. Tired of carrying two versions of the same person in her head and pretending they didn't overlap. Today, Mason was going to try to notice her. The thought made her chest flutter and ache at the same time. On the bus, Ava sat by the window like always, hoodie up, earbuds in, no music. But this time she wasn't disappearing into herself. This time she was watching the reflection in the glass, checking her hair, tugging her sleeves down, suddenly aware of the fact that she existed in a body that could be seen. She hated that. She also kind of loved it. At school, the hallways were louder than usual. Or maybe she was just more aware of them. Every laugh felt amplified. Every voice felt important. Ava walked to her locker slowly, heart beating too fast. She opened it. Closed it. Pretended to rearrange books she didn't need. She was waiting. For what, she didn't know. For him to appear. For some sign. For the universe to acknowledge what was about to happen. Then she heard his voice. Not laughing this time. Just talking. "I'll catch up with you later, yeah?" Ava turned. Mason Reed was standing a few lockers down, alone. He wasn't surrounded by friends. He wasn't mid-joke. He wasn't performing. He was just there. And for the first time since she'd known him, he looked uncertain. He scanned the hallway slowly, like he was searching for something specific. Or someone. Ava's heart slammed into her ribs. He looked up. Their eyes met. This time, he didn't smile politely and look away. This time, he actually looked at her. Not just a glance. Not just recognition. Attention. Real, focused attention. Ava froze. So did he. For a moment, the hallway noise faded into background static. Students moved around them, laughing, shoving, living entire lives in the space between their locked gazes. Mason took a step closer. Just one. Ava's hands were shaking. He stopped in front of her locker. "Hey," he said. Not casual. Not automatic. Careful. "Hey," Ava replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Mason swallowed. Up close, he was taller than she realized. His eyes were darker too. Brown, not hazel like she thought. He smelled faintly like deodorant and something clean, something warm. "This is going to sound weird," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "but do I know you?" Ava's heart nearly stopped. "Yes," she said softly. Mason blinked. Not recognition. Confusion. "From somewhere else?" he asked. Ava's pulse roared in her ears. She could lie. She could say maths class. Or English. Or that they'd done a group project. But this moment felt too big for lies. "I'm Ava," she said. The world seemed to pause. Mason's face changed in real time. First disbelief. Then shock. Then something like awe, as a big smile cracked his face. "Ava," he repeated. "As in Ava, Ava?" She nodded, heart pounding. Mason let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for weeks. "Oh my God," he said quietly. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was real. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Not as a classmate. Not as background. As her. You're here," he said stupidly. Ava laughed softly, half hysterical. "Yeah. I've been here the whole time." Mason ran a hand through his hair, eyes flicking over her face, like he was trying to line up two images in his head. "Wait," he said. "You're the girl who sits behind me in maths." Ava nodded. "And across from you in English." "And in the library," he added slowly. "You always sit by the window." Ava blinked. "You noticed?" Mason's mouth curved into a small, stunned smile. "Apparently I did. I just didn't connect it." Ava's chest ached in a way that felt both painful and beautiful. They stood there for a moment, staring at each other like they'd both stepped through a portal. "So," Mason said finally, voice soft and nervous and nothing like the confident guy from the hallway. "This is what you look like." Ava's cheeks warmed. "This is what you look like." Mason laughed quietly. "Yeah. I guess." Another pause. Then he said, "You're not what I expected." Ava's stomach dropped. "Oh," she said, trying to sound casual. "In a bad way?" Mason shook his head quickly. "No. In a good way. Like you actually exist." Ava smiled faintly. "I've been trying to convince you of that." Mason smiled back, but it was soft. Gentle. "Ava," he said, "you're not invisible." The words hit her harder than anything else he could have said. Her throat tightened. "You didn't see me before," she whispered. Mason's expression shifted. Guilt, regret, something honest. "I saw you. A pretty girl. A quiet girl. But I didn't know you," he said. "And I hate that." He hesitated, then added, "I think I didn't see anyone properly. I was just moving through stuff. Doing what I was supposed to do." Ava nodded. "That's what you said online." Mason smiled, sad and warm at the same time. "I guess I wasn't lying." The bell rang. Loud. Jarring. Real life crashing back in. Students started moving again, flowing around them like a river. Mason blinked, then laughed under his breath. "Of course. Perfect timing." Ava smiled. "We have English next." Mason nodded. "Yeah. Together." He hesitated, then did something small but brave. "Do you want to walk there with me?" Ava's heart skipped. "Yeah," she said. "I do like that." They walked side by side down the hallway. Not touching. Not talking much. But close enough that Ava could feel his presence, warm and real and solid next to her. For once, she wasn't on the edge of the crowd. She was in it. With him. In English, Ryan and Sophie stared openly when Mason sat next to Ava instead of across from her. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Ryan looked between them like he was watching a plot twist. Mason didn't seem to notice. He leaned slightly toward Ava and whispered, "This feels illegal." Ava smiled. "Why?" "Because I feel like I've been ignoring you for months, and now I'm overcorrecting." Ava laughed softly. "It's okay. I've been ignoring you too. Just in a different way." Mason smiled at that, then focused on the teacher. But every so often, he glanced at her. Not in a creepy way. In a checking-in way. Like he was making sure she was still real. At lunch, something even more surreal happened. Mason sat with her. In the library. At her table. Ryan stared at them like he was witnessing a glitch in the simulation. "Since when do you eat lunch here?" Ryan asked. Mason shrugged. "Since today, apparently." Sophie smirked. "And what about your usual crew?" Mason glanced at Ava. Then back at Sophie. "They'll survive." Ava's heart did a small, dangerous flip. They didn't talk about the reveal much. Not yet. It was too big. Too fresh. Too fragile. But everything felt different. Mason listened to her in person the same way he did online. He laughed at her quiet jokes. He waited when she spoke, never interrupting. He noticed when she went quiet and asked if she was okay. And Ava realized something slowly, gently, like a truth settling into place. He hadn't changed. He'd just finally aligned. That night, when they logged on, it felt strange. Not worse. Just different. "Seeing you today was surreal," Mason said. Ava smiled into her mic. "You're telling me." "I kept expecting you to glitch out," he admitted. "Like you weren't actually real." Ava laughed. "Sorry to disappoint." Mason's voice softened. "I'm really glad you are." There was a pause. Then he added, quieter, "I like you even more now." Ava's chest warmed. "Good," she said. "Because I was afraid you wouldn't." Mason snorted. "Ava. You beat me at shooters and existential conversations." You're unstoppable. She smiled. For the first time in her life, the person she was online and the person she was at school weren't fighting each other. They were finally the same. And Mason was seeing all of it. The strangest part wasn't that Mason sat with her now. It was that it felt normal. Not instantly. Not perfectly. But in the quiet, unsettling way that something new sometimes slipped into your life and didn't ask permission before it stayed. People started noticing. Not in a dramatic, gossip-spreading way. More in small glances and raised eyebrows and half-finished sentences. Mason Reed, basketball guy, was eating lunch in the library. With Ava Brooks. The quiet girl. The hoodie girl. The one most people only recognized as that girl from Maths. Ava felt it in the air. The way Sophie looked at her with curiosity now. The way Ryan started including her more in conversations, like her social value had suddenly increased by proximity. She hated that part. She hated that people treated her differently because of who sat next to her. But she couldn't deny the other part. The part where she didn't feel invisible anymore. On Friday afternoon, Ava was at her locker when she felt a presence beside her. Mason. Again. Like it was just where he belonged now. You heading home? He asked. Ava nodded. Yeah. Bus. Mason hesitated, then said, same. I usually get picked up, but I told my dad I'd take the bus today. Ava blinked. Why? Mason shrugged, a little awkward. I wanted to walk with you. Her heart did that dangerous little flip again. Oh, she said softly. Okay. They walked out together, the late afternoon sun making everything look softer than it really was. The bus stop was crowded, but Mason stood close to her without touching, like he was still learning the shape of her space. They boarded and found 2 empty seats near the back. Ava sat by the window like always. Mason took the seat beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The bus rumbled forward. This felt different from the hallway. Different from the library. This felt like something private. So, Mason said eventually, glancing at her. Can I ask you something kind of stupid again? Ava smiled faintly. That is your brand. He laughed quietly. Yeah. Okay. Were you nervous when you told me? Ava's fingers curled in her lap. Yes, she said honestly. Terrified. Mason nodded slowly. I thought so. She looked at him. What about you? When I told you in the hallway? Mason exhaled, staring straight ahead at the road. I felt like my brain short-circuited. Ava smiled. Good. He laughed, then grew quieter. I kept thinking, how did I not see you, he said. Like actually see you. Ava swallowed. You weren't looking for me. Mason turned to her. I should have been. The words were soft. Not dramatic. But they landed hard. Ava looked out the window, suddenly very aware of her heartbeat. They rode in silence for a bit after that, not uncomfortable. Just full. When the bus stopped near Ava S. Street, she stood up. This is me, she said. Mason stood too, suddenly unsure. Oh. Right. Yeah. Ava hesitated. You're getting off here too? Mason nodded. Yeah. I live like 2 streets over. Ava blinked. You do? Mason laughed softly. Yeah. Apparently I've been living near my favorite person this whole time. Her heart skipped. They stepped off the bus together. The neighborhood was quiet, lined with trees and parked cars and houses that all looked vaguely similar. Ava felt strange, walking home with him, like she was letting someone into a world she'd always kept sealed. So this is where Void Bloom lives, Mason said lightly. Ava smiled. Yeah. Not very exciting. Mason shook his head. It is. It's real. They stopped outside her house. Pixel was probably sitting on the windowsill, judging the world. Ava turned to him. This is me. Mason nodded, hands shoved into his pockets. Cool. There was a pause. The kind that stretched. Neither of them moved. So, Mason said, voice quieter. Are we okay? Ava tilted her head. What do you mean? I mean, he said carefully, us. Now that everything's out in the open. Ava thought about it. About the nights talking until midnight. About the reveal. About the way he looked at her now, like he was still adjusting his focus. I think we're better than okay, she said softly. I think we're just learning. Mason smiled at that. A real one. Not his confident one. Not his athlete one. His Mason one. I like that, he said. Learning. Ava hesitated, then said, do you want to come over sometime? To actually hang out? Not just online. Mason's eyes widened slightly. You're inviting me into your world. Ava shrugged, pretending her heart wasn't racing. You've already been in my head for weeks. This seems less risky. Mason laughed. That's terrifying. But yes, he added quickly. I do really like that. They stood there, awkward and quiet again. Then Mason did something small and huge at the same time. He reached out. Not fully. Just enough for his fingers to brush against hers. Not grabbing. Not holding. Asking. Ava felt the contact like electricity. She let her fingers curl around his. Mason's breath hitched. They stood there like that for a moment, hands lightly linked, the world suddenly very quiet. This is different from a headset, Mason said softly. Ava smiled. Yeah. I like this better, he admitted. Ava's chest warmed. Me too. Reluctantly, she let go. I'll message you later, Mason said. Ava nodded. Okay. He turned to walk away, then stopped and looked back. Hey, Ava? Yeah? Thanks for not giving up on me when I didn't see you. Ava swallowed. Thanks for finally looking. Mason smiled once more, then walked down the street toward his house. Ava stood there for a long moment after he disappeared from view. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Mason. Mason, this is officially the weirdest and best day of my life. Mason, I can't believe you're real. Ava laughed quietly to herself. Ava, who would have thought? Ava, thanks for looking for me. She went inside, heart full in a way she'd never felt before. Because for the first time, her life wasn't split into two versions anymore. There was no online world. No real world. There was just her. And him. In the same place. At the same time. Learning how to exist together without a screen in between. Ava had never been this aware of her own room before. Not when she spent hours in it every day. Not when it was just her and Pixel and the glow of her monitor and the soft hum of her PC. But now, standing in the doorway with Mason in the hallway outside, suddenly everything felt exposed. Too many posters. Too many books stacked on the desk. Too many cables. Too many signs of who she actually was. You can come in, she said, then immediately wanted to crawl into a hole because she said it too quietly. Mason stepped inside like he was entering a museum. Wow, he said softly. Ava's stomach dropped. What? No, not in a bad way, he said quickly. It's just this is where you exist. Ava frowned. That's a weird thing to say. Mason smiled. Yeah. But it makes sense. This is where Void Bloom lives. Ava laughed under her breath. Void Bloom lives in my PC. Mason glanced at her setup. Dual monitors. Mechanical keyboard. Headset hanging on the side of the desk. A couple of gaming figurines she collected over the years. His eyes lit up. Oh my god. This is your actual setup. Ava felt weirdly proud. Yeah. This is way better than mine, he said. Mine's just a laptop on my bed like a crime. Ava snorted. That explains a lot. Pixel chose that moment to jump down from the windowsill and walk directly toward Mason. He froze. Oh, he said carefully. Hello. Pixel stopped in front of him and stared. Ava watched, holding her breath. Pixel hated everyone. Mason crouched slowly. You must be Pixel. Pixel blinked. Then rubbed against his leg. Ava's jaw dropped. Okay, she said. That's illegal. Mason laughed softly. I'm chosen. Pixel purred like a traitor. I've had her for 3 years and she barely acknowledges my existence, Ava muttered. Mason looked smug. She recognizes good people. Ava rolled her eyes. Or she just wants to destroy you emotionally later. Mason straightened and looked around again. So this is where you destroy entire teams, he said. Ava gestured to the chair. This is the throne. Mason sat down carefully, like it might explode. I feel like I'm sitting on sacred ground. Ava leaned against her desk. It's just a chair. It's your chair. Ava didn't know why that made her chest feel warm. They stood there awkwardly for a moment, neither quite sure what to do without a shared screen and headsets to hide behind. So, Mason said. Do we play? Ava smiled. We can. Or we can just hang out. Mason blinked. We're allowed to do that? Ava laughed. Apparently. He hesitated, then said, Can I sit on your bed? I feel like that's less dangerous than the throne. Ava nodded. Yeah. Mason sat on the edge of her bed, hands resting on his knees like he didn't know what to do with them. He looked around again, taking everything in. I always imagined your room would be dark, he said. It usually is at night, Ava replied. I like the lights low. It's calm, he said. I like it. Ava swallowed. You're the first person from school who has ever been in here. Mason looked at her. Really? She nodded. I don't really invite people over. Mason's voice softened. I'm honored. They fell into silence again. Not awkward. Just quiet. Different from online silence. This one had weight. Mason glanced at her. Can I ask you something? Ava smiled. You can. He laughed softly. Okay. When we first started playing, what did you think I was like? Ava thought about it. I thought you were funny, she said. And a little chaotic. And way more confident than you realized. Mason blinked. Confident? Yeah, she said. Not in a loud way. In a you're not scared to be honest way. Mason looked down at his hands. That's weird. I always thought you were the confident one. Ava laughed quietly. Me? Yeah, he said. You always knew what to do. In the game, in conversations. You never pretended to be cooler than you were. Ava tilted her head. I just didn't think anyone was watching. Mason looked up at her. I was. The words hung in the air. Ava's heart skipped. They looked at each other for a moment too long. Not like friends. Not like strangers. Like two people standing at the edge of something neither of them had practiced for. Mason spoke first, his voice lower. Is this weird? He asked. Ava swallowed. A little. Bad weird? She shook her head. No. Just new. Mason nodded. Yeah. New is terrifying. Ava smiled faintly. Everything good usually is. Mason hesitated, then asked, Can I hold your hand again? Ava's breath caught. Yeah, she said. Mason reached out slowly, like he was afraid she'd vanish if he moved too fast. Their fingers intertwined. This time, it felt different from outside. Warmer. More real. More dangerous. Mason's thumb brushed lightly against her knuckles. Ava's heart felt like it might explode. This is better than a headset, he whispered. Ava laughed softly. You already said that. I need to keep saying it so my brain catches up. She smiled. Your brain is slow. Accurate. They sat like that for a moment, hands linked, the room filled with nothing but quiet breathing and the soft purr of Pixel. Mason shifted slightly closer. Not touching anywhere else. Just closer. Ava felt the space between them shrink. Her thoughts tangled. Should she move? Should she say something? Should she look at him or look away? Mason spoke quietly. Ava? Yeah? Can I do something reckless? Her heart slammed. Define reckless. I mean, he said softly, can I kiss you? The world narrowed to that sentence. Ava stared at him, mind blank, heart racing. This wasn't a cutscene. There was no button to press. No safe dialogue option. Just choice. She nodded. Yes. Mason didn't move immediately. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind. Ava didn't. Their lips met gently. Not dramatic. Not rushed. Just soft and careful and real. Ava's entire body felt like static. Mason's hand tightened slightly around hers, grounding himself. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling in that stunned, breathless way people only smiled when something had just changed their entire internal world. Okay, Mason whispered. Ava laughed softly. Okay? That was better than any win streak. Ava smiled, cheeks warm. Low bar. Mason laughed, then grew quiet again. So, he said, does this mean we're officially something? Ava thought about it. Not labels. Not pressure. Just truth. I think, she said softly, we're just two people who finally found each other in the same world. Mason smiled. I like that. They stayed there, hands still linked, the glow from Ava's monitor casting soft light over both of them. No screens. No avatars. No usernames. Just Ava. Just Mason. And a first kiss that felt more real than anything that had ever happened through a headset. Everything felt different after that. Not in a dramatic, fireworks way. There was no music swelling, no cinematic shift in lighting. The room looked the same. The posters were still crooked. The cables were still messy. Pixel was still judging them both from the windowsill. But Ava felt like the air itself had changed. Mason was still sitting on her bed. So close now that their knees were almost touching. They weren't holding hands anymore. Not because either of them had pulled away, but because they'd both become suddenly hyper-aware of where their hands were, like they didn't trust them to behave normally. Neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other. Mason was the first to break the silence, his voice quiet and slightly incredulous. So that actually happened. Ava smiled faintly. Pretty sure, yeah. He laughed softly, rubbing the back of his neck. I've kissed people before. But that was different. Ava's heart skipped. Different how? Mason thought about it. Better. Like I wasn't trying to prove anything. Ava swallowed. I've never kissed anyone before. The words came out before she could overthink them. Mason froze. His eyes widened slightly. Wait. Really? Ava nodded, suddenly very aware of how exposed that felt. Yeah. I mean, I never really had a reason. Mason stared at her for a moment, then something in his expression softened completely. Ava, he said quietly, I'm really honored that I got to be your first. Her chest tightened. You don't think that's weird? He shook his head immediately. No. I think it's kind of perfect. She laughed softly. You're biased. Extremely, he admitted. They sat in silence again, but this time it was a different kind. Less nervous. More gentle. Mason glanced around her room again, like he was seeing it through new eyes. This is so surreal, he said. I've spent weeks talking to you and I feel like I know everything about you. But now I'm here and it's like I'm learning you again. Ava smiled. Same. It's like you existed in 2 dimensions and they finally merged. Mason raised an eyebrow. That's the most gamer thing you've ever said. She snorted. You literally met me in a shooter lobby. Fair. He shifted on the bed, a little closer again. Not touching. Just closer. Can I ask you something honest? He said. Ava nodded. Always. Were you ever disappointed? He asked quietly. When you realized who I was? Her heart sank for a split second. Disappointed how? Like I'm not exactly mysterious online guy anymore. I'm just Mason. Basketball idiot. Hallway noise. Ava looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, very gently, I was scared. Mason's chest tightened. Of me? Of losing you, she said. Of finding out that the version of you I cared about wasn't real. Mason swallowed. And you were real, she said. You just hid parts of yourself from the world. Same as me. Mason let out a slow breath, like something inside him had just unclenched. I've spent my whole life being the version of me that's easiest, he admitted. The one people expect. The one that fits. Ava nodded. And I've spent my whole life being the version of me that takes up the least space. Mason looked at her. We're kind of opposites. Yeah, Ava said softly. But we ended up in the same place. He smiled at that. A real one. Not his confident smile. Not his hallway smile. The one he used online when he wasn't pretending. Mason leaned back slightly on the bed, resting his hands behind him. So what happens now? He asked. Ava tilted her head. What do you mean? I mean, do we tell people? Do we keep this quiet? Do we pretend nothing changed? Ava thought about school. About Sophia's curiosity. About Ryan's confusion. About the way people had already started watching her differently just because Mason sat next to her. I don't want to become a story, she said quietly. I don't want people to talk about us like it's entertainment. Mason nodded slowly. Yeah. Me neither. But, Ava added, I also don't want to hide you. Or hide myself. Mason smiled. That sounds like a very you answer. She laughed softly. So maybe we just exist. Mason raised an eyebrow. Revolutionary. Radical concept, Ava agreed. They both laughed, tension easing again. Then Mason's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and groaned. My dad's asking where I am. He is probably wondering why I haven't returned to my natural habitat. Ava smiled. The gym? Exactly. He stood up slowly, suddenly looking a little reluctant. I should probably go, he said. Ava nodded, even though she didn't want him to. Yeah. They stood there awkwardly again, not quite ready to end the moment. Mason shifted his weight, then said, Can I kiss you again? Just to make sure it wasn't a hallucination. Ava laughed, cheeks warm. Yeah. You can. This one was less careful. Still gentle. But sure. Mason's hand rested lightly at her waist this time, like he was checking if she was still real. When they pulled apart, Ava was smiling without even trying. Okay, Mason said quietly. Definitely not a hallucination. Ava smiled. Good to know. He stepped back toward the door, then paused. Ava? Yeah? I'm really glad you spoke that day, he said. In voice chat. Her heart skipped. Me too, she said. I almost didn't. Mason smiled. That would have been the biggest missed connection in history. She laughed softly. We would have been walking past each other forever. Mason shook his head. Yeah. And I would have never known that my favorite person lived 2 streets away. Ava walked him to the door. They stood there for a moment, neither quite wanting to open it. See you tomorrow? Mason asked. Ava nodded. Yeah. Tomorrow. Mason hesitated, then leaned in and kissed her forehead. It was soft. Unexpected. Perfect. Good night, Ava, he said. Good night, Mason. He left. Ava closed the door and leaned against it, heart racing, cheeks warm, brain completely overwhelmed. Pixel jumped down from the windowsill and walked over, tail flicking. Don't look at me like that, Ava muttered. You started this. Pixel purred. Ava slid down to the floor, hugging her knees, smiling like an idiot. For so long, she lived in a world where everything important happened behind a screen. Now the most important thing in her life had just walked out the front door. Ava didn't sleep much that night. Not because she was anxious. Not because she was overthinking. But because every time she closed her eyes, she could still feel it. The way Mason's hand had rested at her waist, the warmth of his lips against her forehead, the sound of his voice saying her name without a headset in between. It felt unreal in the way good things sometimes did. Like if she moved too suddenly, the whole thing would vanish and she'd wake up back in her old life where everything important happened behind a screen. She kept checking her phone. No new messages. Not because he disappeared. Because he said goodnight in real life. And somehow that felt bigger than anything he could have typed. The next morning, Ava stood in front of her mirror longer than usual. Not trying to look different. Just trying to look present. She brushed her hair properly instead of tying it up immediately. She changed hoodies twice before settling on the one that still felt like her, just slightly less worn. She didn't put on makeup. She didn't suddenly become someone else. But she didn't hide either. On the bus, she felt like she existed in a different dimension from everyone else. Like she was carrying a secret that made the world sharper, brighter, more detailed. At school, her heart started racing the second she stepped through the gates. Because now she wasn't wondering if he'd notice her. She was wondering how he would. She didn't have to wait long. She was at her locker when she heard footsteps approach. Not rushed. Not loud. Familiar. Morning, Ava. She turned. Mason was standing there, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair slightly messy like he'd run his hand through it too many times already. Not surrounded by friends. Not performing. Just him. Her chest warmed instantly. Morning, she said, smiling. Not small. Not polite. Real. Mason smiled back, and something in his expression shifted, like seeing her had reset his entire day. Did you sleep? He asked. Ava laughed softly. Barely. Same, he admitted. My brain kept replaying last night like a highlight reel. Ava's cheeks warmed. That's embarrassing. Extremely, he agreed. I don't care. They stood there, smiling at each other like idiots in the middle of the hallway. People walked past. Some glanced. Some didn't. For once, Ava didn't feel like shrinking. Mason hesitated, then did something simple that felt huge. He reached out and took her hand. Just naturally. Like it made sense. Ava's breath caught. Not because she was scared. Because she was being seen. Not just by him. By the world. A group of girls walked past and whispered something. Ryan slowed down as he approached, eyebrows raised. Okay, Ryan said. So this is happening. Ava felt a familiar urge to retreat, to pull her hand away, to disappear. Mason didn't let go. Instead, he squeezed her fingers gently. Yeah, Mason said calmly. It is. Ryan blinked. Then smiled. About time. Ava stared at him. You knew? Ryan shrugged. Not exactly. But I saw the way you two looked at each other yesterday. It wasn't subtle. Ava felt heat rush to her face. Mason laughed. We thought we were being sneaky. You were being tragic, Ryan replied affectionately. They walked to class together. Actually together. Not parallel. Not accidentally in the same direction. Side by side. In maths, Mason sat next to her without hesitation. In English, Sophie looked between them and smirked. Well, she said, this explains a lot. Ava opened her mouth to say something defensive. Mason beat her to it. We met online, he said easily. She's better than me at everything. Ava blinked. That's not true. Mason smiled at her. It absolutely is. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Online? Ava braced herself. Mason shrugged. Yeah. We played games together. Then we realized we'd been going to the same school the whole time. Sophie stared for a second, then laughed. Okay, that's actually kind of adorable. Ava froze. It is? Sophie nodded. Yeah. Way better than the usual we met at a party thing. Ava didn't know how to respond to that. She wasn't used to people framing her life as adorable. At lunch, they went to the library again. This time, not as a surprise. As a choice. Mason sat beside her like he belonged there. Because he did. They didn't hold hands the whole time. They didn't act like a movie couple. They just existed in each other's space. Sometimes talking. Sometimes doing their own thing. Mason leaned over at one point and whispered, "You're really good at this." Ava frowned. At what? Being real, he said. I thought I'd feel weird about people knowing. But I don't. I just feel lighter. Ava smiled softly. Me too. That night, they still logged on. Same game. Same lobby. But now there was a new layer to everything. You realize, Mason said, we're sitting less than 3 kilometers apart right now. Ava laughed. This feels illegal. I could literally walk over, he said. Don't, Ava replied. My mom would think I joined a cult. Mason snorted. Fair. They played 2 matches, then sat in the lobby again. The familiar silence returned. But it didn't feel like escape anymore. It felt like connection. Ava, Mason said quietly. Yeah? I don't think I've ever let anyone see all of me before. Her chest tightened. You don't have to perform for me, she said. Not online. Not at school. Mason smiled, soft and honest. That's why I like you, he said. You never wanted me to be impressive. You just wanted me to be real. Ava stared at the screen, then whispered, you're enough as you are. Mason's voice went quiet. So are you. Ava leaned back in her chair, heart full in a way that felt unfamiliar and fragile and powerful all at once. For so long, she thought being invisible was safer. Now she knew something different. Being seen by the right person didn't make you smaller. It made you exist. The thing Ava hadn't expected was how loud being visible felt. Not in a bad way. Just noticeable. People didn't suddenly treat her like a celebrity or anything, but small things shifted. Teachers said her name more often. Ryan included her in conversations without glancing at Mason first. Sophie started sitting closer to her at lunch instead of across the table like Ava might disappear if she wasn't anchored. And Mason stayed. Not hovering. Not showing off. Just there. Walking with her between classes. Sitting next to her in the library. Waiting for her by her locker like it was the most natural thing in the world. It felt unreal sometimes, like Ava was borrowing someone else's life. On Tuesday, Ava caught herself laughing out loud in the hallway. Not quietly. Not into her sleeve. Out loud. She froze mid-laugh, eyes widening slightly, like she'd broken some internal rule. Mason noticed immediately. You okay? He asked, concerned. Ava blinked. Yeah. I didn't mean to. He smiled. You laughed. She frowned. So? So that's a good thing, he said gently. You don't usually do that here. Ava paused. He was right. She usually saved her real laughter for online. For safe spaces. For when no one was watching. But now someone was. And he wasn't judging her. He was smiling because of it. That realization settled into her chest slowly. In English, they got their presentation topic. Identity in the digital age. Ava stared at the title on the board, heart doing something strange. You have got to be kidding, Mason muttered. Ryan laughed. You two were literally made for this. Ava glanced at Mason. He met her eyes, one eyebrow raised. Well, he said, if we bomb this, it'll be ironic. Ava smiled softly. We won tea. How do you know? Because, she said quietly, we've lived it. Mason's expression shifted. Something warm. Something proud. Something that made Ava's chest feel like it might split open. That afternoon, they worked on the presentation in the library. Not gaming. Not talking about random stuff. Actually collaborating. Mason leaned over her laptop, reading something she typed. You write like you think, he said. Ava frowned. Is that bad? He shook his head. No. It's clear. Like I can see your brain. Ava laughed softly. That sounds terrifying. Mason smiled. It's kind of amazing. They shared earbuds while watching a video about online identity, heads close enough that Ava could feel his shoulder against hers. She didn't pull away. She didn't tense. She just stayed. At one point, Mason glanced at her and said quietly, you know you're taking up space now, right? Ava blinked. What do you mean? I mean, he said, gesturing vaguely around them, you're not trying to disappear anymore. You talk. You laugh. People notice you. Ava swallowed. I didn't mean to change. You didn't, Mason said gently. You just stopped shrinking. The words hit her harder than anything else that day. Stopped shrinking. She'd spent so long making herself smaller so the world wouldn't notice her. Now she wasn't. And nothing bad had happened. That night, they didn't even open the game. They sat on a video call instead. Not for any big reason. Just because Mason wanted to see her. Ava propped her phone up on her desk, feeling suddenly aware of her face in a way she hadn't before. Mason's face appeared on screen, slightly awkward, hair messy, room dim behind him. They both froze. "Oh," Mason said. "Oh," Ava echoed. They stared at each other for a second, then both laughed at the same time. "This is worse than voice chat," Mason said. "Now I'm actually self-conscious." Ava smiled. "Good. Now you know how I feel." He leaned closer to the camera. "You look exactly like I imagined." She raised an eyebrow. "That's suspicious." He shrugged. "I imagined you being real." Her chest tightened. They talked for an hour. About nothing. About everything. About what it felt like to exist in two versions of the same life and finally let them overlap. At one point, Mason said, "You know what the weirdest part is?" "What?" "I thought meeting you in real life would make online less important." Ava smiled faintly. And it just made everything more important." Ava looked at her own reflection in the dark screen. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was choosing between worlds. She was building one. With someone who saw all of her. Not just the parts she curated. Not just the parts she hid. All of it. And somehow, that made her feel bigger instead of exposed. Like she was finally allowed to exist at full volume. The novelty of it all didn't fade. It just settled. Like a background hum Ava hadn't realized was missing from her life until it was there. She and Mason fell into a rhythm that felt almost unreal in how natural it was. They walked to class together. They shared earbuds on the bus. They still gamed most nights, but sometimes they just sat on call while doing homework, the silence between them filled with typing sounds and occasional sighs. It wasn't dramatic. It was gentle. And somehow, that felt more intense than anything else. On Thursday, they ended up on the football field after school. Not because either of them had planned it. Mason had practice, and Ava had stayed back to finish something for English in the library. When she walked out, she saw him across the field, jogging toward her, sweat-damp hair and that easy, familiar smile. "You stalking me now?" he called. Ava smiled. "You wish." He slowed when he reached her, hands on his hips, breathing hard. "I've got 10 minutes before I have to go back in. Walk with me?" She nodded. They wandered along the edge of the field, watching the other players train. The late afternoon sun cast everything in gold, the kind of light that made ordinary moments feel cinematic. Mason kicked at the grass absently. "This used to be my favorite part of the day." Ava glanced at him. "Used to?" "Yeah," he said. "Now it feels like a role I'm playing." Ava was quiet for a moment. "Does that bother you?" she asked. Mason shrugged. "Sometimes. I don't hate it. I just don't want it to be the only thing people see." Ava smiled softly. "It's not. At least not to me." He looked at her then. Really looked. Like he was still getting used to the idea that someone could see more than one version of him and stay. "You know," he said quietly, "I think I've spent most of my life being loud so I wouldn't have to be honest." Ava's chest tightened. "And now?" "Now I don't feel like I have to fill every silence," he said. "Which is wild, because I used to hate silence." Ava smiled. "I used to live in it." He laughed softly. "And now?" "Now I like the quiet," she said. "As long as it's with you." The words slipped out before she could overthink them. Mason stopped walking. Ava froze. "I didn't mean." Mason reached for her hand. Not urgently. Not dramatically. Just there. "I like that too," he said. They stood on the edge of the field, hands linked, surrounded by noise and movement and life, and yet somehow existing in their own pocket of calm. That night, they played co-op instead of ranked. No pressure. No leaderboard. Just them trying to survive a horror game they both pretended didn't scare them. "I hate this," Mason muttered as their characters crept through a dark hallway. "You chose it," Ava reminded him. I thought it would build character. A monster jumped out of the shadows. Mason screamed. Actually screamed. Ava laughed so hard she nearly dropped her controller. Oh my god, she gasped. You're so brave. I'm uninstalling, Mason said. Immediately. Their characters died. They sat in the lobby again, laughing. Then the laughter faded into something softer. Ava? Mason said. Yeah? Do you ever think about the version of you from before this? He asked. Before we met? She thought about it. About late nights alone. About voice chat muted. About sitting in the library pretending she didn't want to be part of anything. Yeah, she said. Sometimes. Do you miss her? Ava shook her head slowly. No. I think she was just waiting. Mason smiled. For what? For someone to hear her, she said. Mason's voice went quiet. I'm really glad it was me. Ava leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. Me too, she said. You found me when I wasn't even looking. There was a pause. Then Mason said, softly, I think that's how the important things always happen. Ava closed her eyes, letting his voice fill the space. Not through static. Not through a screen. Just him. The quiet between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything they didn't need to say out loud. Ava realized she underestimated how fast news traveled at school. Not because anyone had announced anything. Not because she and Mason had posted it online or walked around holding hands dramatically like a movie couple. Just because people noticed. They noticed the way Mason waited by her locker in the mornings. They noticed how he walked her to class instead of disappearing into his usual crowd. They noticed how he sat with her in the library at lunch like it was the most natural thing in the world. And apparently, that was enough. It started with looks. Then whispers. Then comments that were said just loud enough to be heard. Ava was at her locker on Monday when two girls from her year walked past. Is that her? One of them whispered. Yeah, that's her. Mason's girlfriend. Girlfriend. The word hit Ava like a small shock. Not unpleasant. Just heavy. She closed her locker slowly, heart thudding, suddenly very aware of the fact that she'd been given a label without being asked. Mason appeared a second later, like he always did now. Hey, he said, smiling. You ready for English? Ava nodded, trying to sound normal. Yeah. They walked together down the hallway. Mason didn't seem to notice the glances or the whispers or the way people's attention lingered on them like they were something new and mildly fascinating. Or maybe he did notice, and just didn't care. Halfway to class, Mason reached for her hand. It was casual. Easy. Like it had already become habit. Ava's breath caught. Not because she didn't want it. Because suddenly everyone could see. A couple of people walked past and smiled knowingly. Someone else raised their eyebrows. Ryan gave them a subtle thumbs up from across the hall. Ava's instinct was to pull away. To shrink. To retreat back into the version of herself that took up as little space as possible. But Mason's hand was warm. Steady. Real. So instead of letting go, she squeezed his fingers gently. Mason glanced at her, surprised, then smiled in a way that made her chest ache. They sat together in English, knees brushing under the desk. Ava found it harder than usual to focus on the lesson, not because she was distracted, but because she was constantly aware of him. His arm when he leaned back. His knee when he shifted. The quiet way he said her name when he wanted her attention. At one point, the teacher turned to write on the board and Mason leaned closer. Everyone's staring at us, he whispered. Ava felt heat rush to her cheeks. I know. He smiled softly. Does it bother you? She hesitated. A little, she admitted. I'm not used to it. Mason's expression shifted. Concern, not teasing. We can not do this if you want, he said quietly. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. Ava looked at their hands resting together on the desk. At how normal it felt. At how much she didn't want to let go. It's not you, she said. It's just being seen. Mason nodded slowly. Yeah. That makes sense. He didn't pull away. He just laced his fingers through hers more gently this time, like he was reminding her she had a choice. At lunch, something even stranger happened. A girl Ava vaguely recognized from the basketball crowd approached their table. She was pretty in an effortless way. Perfect hair. Confident posture. The kind of girl Ava used to compare herself to automatically without even trying. "Hey, Mason," the girl said brightly. "Coach was looking for you earlier." Mason looked up. "Oh, yeah? I'll catch him later." The girl smiled at him, then glanced at Ava. "Oh," she said. "You're Ava, right?" Ava blinked. Yeah. I'm Mia," the girl said. "Nice to finally meet you." "Finally." Ava forced a polite smile. "Nice to meet you too." Mia's gaze flicked between them, curious but not unkind. "So," Mia said, smiling at Mason, "you disappeared on us." Mason shrugged. "I've just been busy." Mia laughed lightly. Clearly. There was a pause. A small one. Not hostile. But loaded. "Well," Mia said eventually, "I'll see you at practice." "Yeah," Mason replied. "See you." Mia walked away. Ava stared at her tray. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath until she let it out slowly. Mason turned to her immediately. "Hey. You okay?" Ava nodded, but it felt automatic. "Yeah." She was nice. Mason studied her face. "But?" Ava hesitated. Then, quietly, she asked, "More your type?" Mason frowned. "What does that mean?" Ava shrugged. "You know. Confident. Popular. Looks like she belongs with you." Mason stared at her like she'd said something in another language. "Ava," he said gently, "you do belong with me." Her chest tightened. "At school, I mean." Mason leaned closer, voice low. "At school, online, anywhere. I didn't choose you by accident." Ava swallowed. "I know," she said. I don't want to be the quiet girl you're dating." Mason's eyes softened. "You're not," he said. "You're the girl who beats me at every game I play and knows me better than anyone else." Ava laughed faintly. "That's a very specific description." "It's accurate," he said. There was a pause. Then Mason did something small but bold. He leaned in and kissed her. Not long. Not dramatic. Just a quick, soft kiss on the lips. In the library. In public. Ava's entire body went still. When he pulled back, her heart was racing. Mason searched her face. "Too much?" Ava shook her head slowly. "No." Her voice was quiet, but her smile wasn't. "Just new." Mason smiled back. "Yeah. Me too." That afternoon, they walked to the bus together again. This time, Mason didn't hesitate before reaching for her hand. And this time, Ava didn't even think about who might be watching. She just thought about how his fingers fit with hers. How natural it felt. How strange it was that something so simple had once felt impossible. On the bus, Mason leaned his head lightly against hers. Ava felt the warmth of his shoulder, the steady rhythm of his breathing. "You know," he murmured, "I think I like being your boyfriend." Ava smiled softly. "You think?" "I'm still testing the theory," he said. "But so far, it's my favorite role." Ava laughed quietly. "It suits you." Mason turned his head slightly and kissed her hair. No one said anything. No one stared. And for the first time, Ava realized something important. Being visible wasn't just about being looked at. It was about being chosen. And Mason was choosing her. Out loud. In the open. Every single day. Ava tried not to read the comments. She failed almost immediately. It wasn't like anyone was being cruel. Not really. No one walked up to her and said anything outright. There were no dramatic confrontations or whispered insults in the bathroom. It was worse than that. It was subtle. "Wow, you're so lucky. He's actually really sweet." "How did that even happen?" They were said with smiles. With curiosity. With that tone people used when they were pretending not to judge. Ava sat in the library with Mason, pretending to focus on her laptop while Sophie talked animatedly about an upcoming party. Mason, you're coming, right? Sophie asked. The whole team's going. Mason glanced at Ava. I don't know yet. Sophie followed his gaze and smiled at Ava. You should come too. Ava blinked. Oh. I'm not really. She's not really a party person, Mason said gently, without making it a big deal. Sophie nodded, still smiling. That's okay. We'll corrupt her slowly. Ava laughed politely, but the comment stuck to her like static. Not really a party person. Not really his world. After Sophie left, Ava found herself unusually quiet. Mason noticed immediately. You went silent, he said softly. Did she say something wrong? Ava shook her head. No. She was nice. Then what's going on, he asked. Ava stared at the screen, watching the cursor blink uselessly. I feel like I'm borrowing your life, she said quietly. Mason frowned. What do you mean? I mean your friends, your world, your everything. I don't feel like I fit into it. I feel like I'm just visiting. Mason leaned back in his chair, studying her. Ava, he said, you're not visiting. You're here. She swallowed. That's not how it feels to other people. Mason's expression softened. Is that what this is about? Other people? Ava hesitated. Then nodded. I hear things, she admitted. Not mean things. Just comparisons. People saying I'm lucky. Or surprised. Or that I'm not what they expected. Mason sighed quietly. People said the same thing about me when I started hanging out in the library. Ava blinked. They did? Yeah, he said. They said I was slumming it. Ava's stomach dropped. That's awful. Mason shrugged. I didn't care. Because I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was just trying to be where you were. Ava's chest tightened. I don't want to be your experiment, she said softly. Mason leaned forward, elbows on the table. You're not. You're my choice. She laughed faintly. You make it sound simple. It is simple, he said. It's just not easy. That night, Ava logged on alone. For the first time in weeks. Not because Mason wasn't around. He messaged her earlier, apologizing for having family over and saying he'd be on late. She told him it was fine. And it was. But as she sat in her chair, headset on, lobby music playing, she felt something familiar creeping back in. The old feeling. The one where she existed best when no one could see her. She joined a ranked match solo. Muted voice chat automatically. Back to pings. Back to silence. She dominated the match anyway. Top kills. MVP. Same as always. But it didn't feel as good. Because now she knew what it felt like to be heard. When she logged off, her phone buzzed immediately. Mason, I'm so sorry I disappeared. Mason, family ambush. Mason, you okay? Ava stared at the message for a moment. Then typed. Ava, yeah. Just played a few games. Mason, without me? Betrayal. Ava, someone had to carry the team. Mason, excuse you, that's literally my job. Ava smiled, but it felt a little forced. Mason, you seem quiet. Mason, everything okay? Ava hesitated. Then decided not to lie. Ava, do you ever feel like you're out of my league? Mason? Mason, no? Mason, I feel like you are out of mine half the time. Ava stared at the screen. Ava, be serious. Mason, I am serious. Mason, you're smart, funny, talented, beautiful, and you know me better than anyone. Mason, I just happen to be tall and good at throwing a ball. Ava laughed softly. Ava, that's a very simplified version of you. Mason, exactly. Just like Quiet Girl is a simplified version of you. Ava leaned back in her chair, letting his words settle. Ava, people keep acting surprised that you're with me. Mason, people mold me into who they want me to be. Mason, I don't really trust their judgment. But I trust yours. Ava smiled. Then Mason sent another message. Mason, also I kissed you in a library. Mason, public scandal. Mason, pretty sure that means we're equal now. Ava laughed out loud. Ava, you're impossible. Mason, and yet, you chose me. Ava's chest warmed. She realized something slowly. It wasn't that she felt out of his league. It was that she still hadn't adjusted to being in any league at all. She'd spent so long thinking she didn't belong anywhere that now, when someone chose her openly, her brain didn't know where to put it. She messaged him back. Ava, I think I'm still learning how to exist in your world. Mason, then I'll learn how to exist in yours. Mason, we meet in the middle. Ava smiled, real this time. Because for the first time, she wasn't worried about whether she was enough for him. She was just learning how to believe that she already was. Mason's world was louder than Ava expected. Not just in volume. In energy. In movement. In the way everyone seemed to talk at once and somehow still understand each other. The first time she stepped into it properly was Friday night. Not a party. Not yet. Just pizza at one of his friend's houses after practice. Mason had asked gently, like he was offering her an escape route before she even needed one. You don't have to come, he said. I want to be offended. Ava had hesitated, then surprised herself. I want to try. So now she was standing in the doorway of a house she didn't recognize, music drifting out, laughter bouncing off the walls, and about 12 people she barely knew turning to look at her at the same time. Her instinct was to retreat. Mason's hand tightened around hers. Not pulling. Just grounding. You good? He murmured. Ava swallowed. I think so. Okay, he said softly. We can leave whenever you want. No explanations. That helped more than he probably realized. They stepped inside. The living room was crowded with people sitting on couches, on the floor, on armrests. Someone was yelling at a TV over a sports replay. Someone else was already halfway through a story that involved a broken window and a very angry neighbor. Mason, someone called. You made it. A guy Ava recognized vaguely from the basketball team walked over and clapped Mason on the shoulder. Bro, where have you been hiding? You basically vanished. Mason shrugged. I've been busy. The guy grinned. Yeah, we know. You went soft. Mason laughed. Tragic. Then the guy looked at Ava. Oh, he said. Hey. Ava smiled, small but polite. Hi. I'm Lucas, he said. You must be the famous Ava. Ava froze. Famous? Lucas laughed. Mason hasn't shut up about you. Mason groaned. That is not true. Lucas smirked. It absolutely is. Ava felt heat rush to her cheeks. Mason leaned in. Ignore him. He exaggerates everything. Lucas raised an eyebrow. You literally ditched a game night for her. Mason met Ava's eyes. Worth it. Her heart did that stupid, dangerous flip again. They sat on the couch together. Not the center. Not the spotlight. Just on the edge. Ava listened more than she spoke at first. The conversations were fast and loud and full of inside jokes she didn't understand yet. People talked over each other without meaning to. Someone spilled a drink and laughed about it. Someone else started arguing about the best movie sequel of all time. It felt like a different universe. Not hostile. Just unfamiliar. At one point, a girl sat down across from them. She was pretty in that effortless way again. Confident posture. Easy smile. Ava, right? The girl asked. Ava nodded. Yeah. I'm Jess, she said. I've been dying to meet you. Ava blinked. Why? Jess laughed. Because Mason's been acting weird. Mason snorted. Wow, thanks. No, I mean good weird, Jess said. Like you actually talk about feelings now. Ava glanced at Mason. He looked embarrassed. That's slander, he said. Jess smiled at Ava. You did that, didn't you? Ava hesitated. I might have. Jess laughed. Honestly? Good. We've been waiting for someone to humanize him for years. Mason covered his face. I hate all of you. Ava laughed before she could stop herself. Not quiet. Not careful. Out loud. The sound felt strange and exhilarating. Mason looked at her like he'd just witnessed something incredible. You laughed, he said softly. She smiled, surprised. I did. Jess grinned. She's dangerous. As the night went on, something shifted. Ava started answering questions instead of deflecting them. She told a story about a game bug that had made her character walk through walls. She teased Mason when someone mentioned his terrible singing. She even argued passionately about why one of the movie sequels was objectively superior. She wasn't loud. She wasn't the center of attention. But she existed. Fully. Mason watched her the entire time, not in a possessive way. In a proud way. Later, when they stepped outside for air, Ava leaned against the cool brick wall and exhaled. That was a lot, she admitted. Mason smiled. Good a lot or bad a lot? Ava thought about it. Scary, she said. But kind of fun. Mason's eyes softened. You were amazing in there. Ava laughed. I barely said anything. You said enough, he said. And you didn't disappear. Ava's chest tightened. I wanted to, she admitted. At first. But you didn't. No, she said. I didn't. Mason reached out and brushed his thumb lightly over her knuckles. I like this version of you, he said gently. Ava smiled. This is the same version as always. I just stopped hiding her. Mason leaned in and kissed her. Not rushed. Not secret. Just warm and certain and real, standing under the porch light while laughter and noise continued behind them. When they pulled apart, Mason rested his forehead against hers. You don't have to become part of my world, he said quietly. But I'm really glad you let me bring you into it. Ava smiled softly. I don't want to live in just one world anymore, she said. I want both. Mason laughed quietly. That sounds like a dangerous request. Ava looked up at him. Good. I've never been good at playing it safe. And for the first time in her life, she meant it. The night after pizza, she lay in bed replaying the evening in her head. The way Jess had smiled at her. The way Lucas had teased Mason. The way Mason had watched her like she'd done something incredible just by existing in a room full of people. It should have felt good. It did feel good. So why did her chest feel tight? The feeling followed her into Monday. Into the hallway. Into English. Into lunch in the library. Mason was the same as always. He held her hand. He kissed her goodbye before class. He leaned over and whispered jokes that made her smile without thinking. But Ava felt different. Not worse. Just smaller again. At lunch, Sophie sat down with them, phone in hand. Okay, I have to ask, she said, eyes sparkling. Are you two going to the formal together? Ava froze. Mason blinked. The formal? Sophie stared at him. It's in 3 weeks. How do you not know this? Mason laughed. I try to forget school events exist. Sophie turned to Ava. You're obviously going together, right? Ava felt everyone's eyes on her. Not just Sophie's. Ryan's. Mason's. A couple of people at the next table. She felt the old instinct surge. Deflect. Minimize. Disappear. I don't really go to things like that, Ava said quietly. Mason frowned. Why not? Ava shrugged. It's just not my thing. Sophie tilted her head. But it's kind of a big deal. Ava smiled politely. For some people. Mason looked between them. We could go. If you want. Ava's chest tightened. Not because of the event. Because of the attention. Mason, she said softly, I don't want to be your social project. The words slipped out before she could stop them. The table went quiet. Sophie blinked. Oh. I didn't mean. It's okay, Ava said quickly. I don't want to feel like I have to do things to fit into your world. Mason's expression shifted. Not angry. Confused. Harp, I wasn't trying to make you fit anywhere, he said. I just thought it might be fun. Ava looked down at her hands. Everything in your life is public. Sports. Friends. Events. People watching. I don't live like that. Mason's voice was gentle. You don't have to change how you live. I'm just inviting you in. Ava swallowed. It doesn't feel like an invitation. It feels like pressure. Mason stiffened slightly. That's not fair. Ava looked up at him. Isn't it? Sophie cleared her throat awkwardly. I'm going to go. Let you two talk. Ryan followed her lead, muttering something about needing coffee. Suddenly it was just them. In the library. With everyone pretending not to listen. Mason leaned forward, lowering his voice. I'm not trying to turn you into someone you're not. Ava shook her head. I know. But I'm starting to feel like the version of me you like only exists in quiet spaces. Mason blinked. What does that mean? It means, Ava said, heart pounding, I was enough when it was just us. Online. In my room. In the library. But the moment I step into your world, I feel like I'm being evaluated. Mason's jaw tightened. By who? Everyone, she said softly. Including me. Mason was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I never asked you to be anything except yourself. Ava laughed quietly, but there was no humor in it. You didn't have to ask. The world already does. Mason leaned back in his chair, frustration creeping into his voice. So what, you want me to shrink my life instead? Pretend my friends don't exist? Stop inviting you places so you don't feel uncomfortable? Ava flinched. That's not what I said. It kind of is, he said. You say you don't want to be my social project, but you also don't want to exist in my world. Ava's eyes stung. Because your world doesn't feel like it has space for me. Mason stared at her. That's not true. It feels true to me, she said, quietly but firmly. There was a long pause. Not dramatic. Just heavy. Mason ran a hand through his hair. I feel like I'm constantly trying to bring you closer to me, he said. And you keep stepping back. Ava swallowed hard. I'm not stepping back from you. I'm trying to hold on to myself. Mason's voice softened. I don't want you to lose yourself. Then why do I feel like I already am, she whispered. The question landed between them like something fragile. Mason didn't have an answer. Not a good one. I just want us to exist, he said finally. In real life. Not just in quiet corners. Ava nodded slowly. So do I. But I don't want to exist as Mason's girlfriend. I want to exist as me. Mason's chest tightened. You think that's all you are to me? He asked. Ava looked at him. Not accusing. Just honest. I'm scared that's all I am to everyone else. Mason's frustration drained out of him, replaced by something softer and sadder. Harp, I don't care about everyone else. I know, she said. But I do. Because I spent my whole life being invisible. And now I feel like I'm visible for the wrong reason. Mason stared at her, the weight of it finally landing. You think I'm making you smaller, he said quietly. Ava's voice trembled. I think I'm letting myself get smaller because I don't know how to exist in your world without disappearing. Silence. Real silence. The kind that hurt. Mason stood slowly. I need some air. Ava nodded. Okay. He hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Not romantic. Not warm. Just familiar. I don't want to fight with you, he said softly. Me neither, Ava whispered. Mason walked away. Ava stayed in the library, staring at the table where his hand had been. Her phone buzzed a few minutes later. A message from Mason. Mason, I'm not mad. Mason, I'm just trying to understand. Mason, and I think I messed up without realizing. Ava stared at the screen, chest aching. She typed. Then deleted. Then typed again. Ava, I don't want to lose what we have. Ava, I just don't know how to keep it without losing myself. There was a long pause. Then. Mason, I don't want you to lose yourself. Mason, I just don't know how to make space for both of us yet. Ava leaned back in her chair, eyes stinging. For the first time since they met, they weren't synced. Not in the game. Not in real life. They weren't breaking. But they were no longer moving together. And somehow, that felt scarier than any argument. Because this wasn't about attraction. Or jealousy. Or misunderstandings. It was about identity. And neither of them knew how to fix that for the other. The worst part wasn't the fight. It was the silence after. Ava kept reaching for her phone without meaning to. The habit was so deeply wired into her body that she didn't even notice she was doing it at first. She'd unlock the screen, stare at the home page, then lock it again. No new messages. No you okay? No I miss you. No invite popping up on her screen at exactly the time it always did. Mason didn't log on that night. Ava did. She sat in her chair with her headset on, lobby music humming softly in the background, staring at the friends list. Mason offline. She swallowed. It was ridiculous how much that one word hurt. Offline. She queued solo. Muted voice chat automatically. Back to pings. Back to silence. Back to the version of herself that existed perfectly without anyone needing her to speak. The match started. She played well. Too well. Pure muscle memory. Clean shots. Perfect rotations. She wiped entire teams without breaking a sweat. She won. Then she won again. Then again. MVP. 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 Her screen filled with stats and achievements and digital praise. It felt empty. Because there was no one saying her name in her headset. No one laughing when she pulled off something ridiculous. No one there to witness it except strangers who didn't know her and didn't care. After the fourth match, she quit. She pulled her headset off and sat there in the quiet, staring at her reflection in the dark screen. This was what she wanted before. To be alone. To be safe. To be invisible again. So why did it feel like she lost something important? At school the next day, Mason didn't wait by her locker. Ava told herself it was fine. Of course he wouldn't. They fought. He needed space. She needed space. This was what healthy people did, right? Still, her chest felt tight walking into the building alone. In maths, Mason sat 2 rows away. Not next to her. Not even behind her. Just somewhere else. He didn't look at her. Ava stared at her worksheet until the numbers blurred. In English, Sophie glanced between them, frowning slightly. Did you guys break up? She whispered. Ava shook her head. No. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Then why are you sitting on opposite sides of the room like divorced parents? Ava huffed a quiet laugh despite herself. We just need space. Sophie nodded slowly. That's either very healthy or very dangerous. Ava didn't know which. At lunch, Ava went to the library. Alone. The same table. The same seat by the window. The chair across from her stayed empty. Ryan stopped by briefly. Mason's at practice, he said casually, like he was testing the waters. Ava nodded. Yeah. I figured. Ryan hesitated. He's not great at this stuff. Feelings, I mean. Ava looked up at him. Neither am I. Ryan smiled gently. Yeah. But you're better at it than he is. Ava didn't respond. That night, Ava didn't log on at all. Not out of spite. Out of exhaustion. She lay on her bed with her laptop closed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Pixel purr beside her. For the first time in weeks, the silence felt heavy again. Not peaceful. Lonely. Her phone buzzed around 10:47 p.m. A message. From Mason. Her heart jumped painfully. Mason, hey. Mason, I don't know if you're on. Mason, but I just wanted to say I miss you. Ava's chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then typed. Ava, I miss you too. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Mason, I didn't realize how much of my day was just you. Mason, until it wasn't tea. Ava swallowed. Ava, same. Another pause. Mason, I'm not avoiding you. Mason, I just don't want to say the wrong thing again. Ava leaned back against her pillow, eyes stinging. Ava, I don't want space from you. Ava, I just needed space from the version of me that was disappearing. The reply came slower this time. Mason, I think I need space from the version of me that thinks he has to be everything all the time. Ava smiled faintly at that. Ava, maybe we both need to learn how to exist separately again. Ava, so we don't lose ourselves inside each other. A long pause. Then. Mason, that might be the healthiest thing anyone has ever said to me. Mason, which is annoying because it means you're right. Ava let out a quiet laugh. The tension eased a little. Not gone. But softer. Mason, can we still talk? Mason, just without pretending everything's perfect. Ava didn't hesitate. Ava, I don't want perfect. Ava, I want real. The typing bubble stayed on screen for a long time. Then. Mason, okay. Mason, then here's real. Mason, I still choose you. Mason, I just need to learn how to choose myself too. Ava's chest warmed. Tears blurred her vision. Ava, I think that's the first time either of us has ever done that. They didn't log on. They didn't video call. They just kept texting. Not flirting. Not fixing everything. Just talking. About fears. About expectations. About how easy it was to lose yourself when someone finally made you feel seen. For the first time, their connection wasn't built on winning games or shared jokes. It was built on honesty. And somehow, that felt more intimate than anything that had happened through a screen. They weren't together in the way they had been. But they weren't gone either. They were learning something new. How to stay connected without disappearing into each other. How to be online without being lost. How to be real without being afraid. The first thing Ava did was mute her mic. Not because she was scared. Because she wanted to hear herself think. The esports club met in one of the computer labs after school on Wednesdays. Ava had known about it for months. She'd seen the posters. She'd hovered over the sign-up form more than once. She'd just never gone. Too visible. Too social. Too real. But this week, something inside her felt different. Not braver exactly. Just less willing to stay small. She walked into the lab with her backpack slung over one shoulder and her hoodie half-zipped, heart beating faster than she'd like to admit. There were about 10 people already there. Mostly guys. A few girls. All sitting at PCs, talking loudly, laughing, arguing about strategies. Ava paused in the doorway. Old instincts kicked in immediately. Turn around. Go home. Log on alone where it's safe. Then she thought about Mason. Not his face. Not his voice. What he said. I still choose you. I just need to learn how to choose myself too. Ava took a breath. And walked in. Hey, a guy near the front said. You here for esports? Ava nodded. Yeah. He smiled. Nice. I'm Sam. What do you play? Ava hesitated for half a second. Then said it. Frontline protocol. Ranked. Sam's eyebrows lifted. Oh. Cool. What rank? Ava swallowed. Top 0.5%. The room went quiet for a beat. Someone let out a low whistle. Okay, Sam said slowly. So, you're insane. Ava laughed. Actually laughed. Not quietly. Not apologetically. Just laughed. They set her up at a PC and ran a scrim. No one knew her. No one knew about Mason. No one was watching her because she was with someone. They were watching her because she was good. Ava moved like she always did. Fast, precise, instinctive. She called plays without even realizing she was doing it. She corrected someone's angle. She suggested a rotation. People listened. Not because she was loud. Because she was right. After the match, Sam turned to her with a grin. Where have you been hiding? Ava smiled softly. I didn't realize I was hiding, she said. And for the first time, she meant it. That night, Ava logged on alone again. But it felt different now. Not lonely. Intentional. She queued ranked and dominated 3 matches in a row, then exited and opened her settings. She hovered over one option. Voice chat, off. She clicked it. On. The next match loaded. Someone immediately spoke. Yo, can anyone take sniper? Ava's heart skipped. She could mute again. She could let someone else answer. Or she could exist. I can, she said. Her voice sounded steady. No one mocked her. No one laughed. Someone just said, sweet. And that was it. They won. After the match, someone added her. Player, nice plays. You should join our stack sometime. Ava stared at the message for a moment. Then smiled. Mason noticed the shift before she told him. They were sitting on a call, both doing homework in comfortable silence. You sound different, he said suddenly. Ava glanced at her screen. Different how? Lighter, he said. Like you're not holding your breath anymore. Ava smiled softly. I joined esports club. Mason blinked. You what? I joined esports club, she repeated. At school. His face broke into the biggest smile she'd seen all week. Ava, he said, genuinely stunned, that's amazing. She laughed. I know. I'm scared. But in a good way. Mason leaned closer to the camera. Is it weird that I'm proud of you? Ava's chest warmed. No. It's nice. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just thoughtful. I realized something, Ava said quietly. What? I don't want to disappear into you. But I also don't want to build myself without you either. Mason nodded slowly. Yeah. Same. She smiled. I think I needed to prove to myself that I exist even when you're not holding my hand. Mason's voice softened. And I do, she said. Turns out I'm still me. Just louder. Mason laughed quietly. The world isn't ready. Ava smiled. Not because of him. Not because of anyone else. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't waiting to be chosen. She was choosing herself. And somehow, that didn't push Mason away. It made space for both of them to exist. Separately. And together. Mason hadn't realized how tired he was until he stopped pretending he wasn't. It hit him on a Thursday afternoon, halfway through practice, when his legs felt heavy in a way they never had before. Not sore. Not injured. Just done. Reed, you good? Coach called from the sidelines. Mason nodded automatically. Yeah. But his body disagreed. He missed a pass. Then another. Someone bumped into him and he snapped without meaning to. Watch it, he muttered, sharper than necessary. The gym felt louder than usual. The lights too bright. The noise overwhelming. For the first time in years, he didn't want to be there. At the end of practice, he sat on the bench longer than usual, staring at the floor while everyone else packed up. Lucas nudged him with his foot. You coming to the gym after? Mason shook his head. Nah. Lucas frowned. Since when? Mason shrugged. Since now. Lucas studied him. You okay, man? Mason hesitated. The old version of him would laughed it off. Made a joke. Said he was fine. The new version thought about Ava. About voice chat. About quiet conversations. About how it felt to not perform. I'm just tired of being the guy everyone expects, Mason said quietly. Lucas blinked. You mean the main character? Mason huffed a small laugh. Yeah. That one. Lucas didn't mock him. Didn't push. Just nodded slowly. That's fair. It surprised Mason how much that meant. That evening, Mason sat in his room with his laptop open, staring at his reflection in the dark screen. He thought about the version of himself he'd been for most of his life. The athlete. The easy smile. The guy who always knew what to say. He built that version carefully. Because it worked. People liked it. Teachers trusted it. Coaches depended on it. But Ava had met a different version. The one who admitted when he was scared. The one who asked questions instead of answering them. The one who didn't know who he was without applause. And instead of rejecting that version, she'd chosen him anyway. That had changed something. Mason grabbed his phone and opened his messages. Mason, random question. Mason, if I quit basketball tomorrow, would you think I was having a breakdown? Ava replied almost instantly. Ava, I think you were being honest. Ava, why? Mason stared at the screen. Then typed. Mason, I don't know who I am if I'm not the basketball guy. Mason, and I think that scares me more than failing. A few seconds passed. Then. Ava, I met you without the jersey. Ava, you were still you. Mason's chest tightened. Mason, you don't think I'd disappear? Ava, no. Ava, I think you'd finally show up. He smiled at that. Not the hallway smile. The real one. The next day at school, something small but radical happened. Mason skipped practice. Not to rebel. Not to make a point. Just because he wanted to walk Ava home. They took the bus together, sitting in the back, shoulders touching. No one clapped for him. No one cared. The world didn't end. Outside her house, Mason stopped and looked at her. I didn't go to practice today, he said. Ava blinked. Why? Because I didn't want to, he admitted. And that felt illegal. Ava smiled softly. How did it feel? Mason thought about it. Terrifying, he said. And kind of incredible. Ava laughed. Welcome to my world. Mason leaned in and kissed her. Not because anyone was watching. Because no one was. Because it was his choice. Later that night, Mason sat at his desk and wrote an email he'd been avoiding for years. Not quitting. Not yet. Just asking for space. For the first time in his life, he wasn't making a decision based on what people expected. He was making one based on how he felt. And that felt like the bravest thing he'd ever done. When he told Ava, she smiled at him through the screen and said, I don't need you to be impressive. I just need you to be real. And for the first time, Mason believed that was enough. The esports tournament was louder than Ava expected. Not just in sound. In energy. In presence. The school gym had been rearranged with rows of desks and monitors, cables running everywhere, posters taped to the walls. Teams clustered together in hoodies and jerseys, laughing nervously, hyping each other up, arguing about settings and strategies. Ava stood near the entrance with her backpack slung over one shoulder, heart pounding. This time, she wasn't here because of Mason. She was here because of herself. Sam spotted her immediately. Ava. You made it. She smiled. Barely. I almost turned around at the door. Sam laughed. That's a good sign. Means it matters. Her team gathered around her. 3 people she'd only known for a couple of weeks, but who already trusted her calls and followed her lead without hesitation. You're our sniper, right? One of them asked. Ava nodded. Yeah. Cool, he said. No pressure, but we're all kind of relying on you. Ava's stomach flipped. But instead of shrinking, something steady settled in her chest. Okay, she said. Let us win, then. Across the gym, Mason stood with Lucas and a couple of others, pretending not to look like he was searching for someone. He wasn't in his uniform. No jersey. No team colors. Just a hoodie and jeans and a nervous energy that felt unfamiliar. Lucas nudged him. You good? Mason nodded absently. Yeah. Just different vibe in here. Lucas smirked. You're in gamer territory now. You're outnumbered. Mason smiled faintly. I kind of like it. Then he saw her. Ava was sitting at a PC, headset around her neck, focused and calm in a way he'd only ever seen through a screen before. Except now she was real. Visible. Confident. She laughed at something one of her teammates said, head tilted back slightly, eyes bright. Mason's chest tightened. Not with jealousy. With awe. He'd spent weeks worrying about how to make space for both of them. Now he realized something quietly, gently, all at once. She didn't need space. She made her own. The match started. Ava's fingers moved like instinct. She called rotations, flanked quietly, landed shots she barely had time to think about. Her team trusted her. Followed her. Won because of her. Mason watched from the sidelines, heart racing in a completely new way. Not because he was being watched. Because he was watching someone he loved become herself. When the final round ended, Ava's team won by a narrow margin. The room erupted in cheers. Sam jumped up and hugged her without warning. "You're insane," he said. "You carried us." Ava laughed, breathless. "We all did." Mason found her a moment later, standing just outside the cluster of her teammates. He didn't interrupt. Didn't steal her moment. Just waited until she looked up and saw him. Her face lit up instantly. "You came," she said. Mason smiled softly. "I wouldn't miss this." She stepped toward him without thinking and hugged him. Not dramatic. Not shy. Just real. Mason wrapped his arms around her, heart pounding. "You were incredible," he murmured into her hair. Ava pulled back slightly, eyes bright. "I wasn't even nervous." Mason laughed quietly. "That's terrifying." She smiled. "I think I finally understand what you feel when you play." Mason's expression softened. "I think I finally understand what you feel when you play." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by noise and movement and life, but somehow in their own quiet bubble again. Two people who met in silence. Now choosing each other out loud. Not because they needed to. Because they wanted to. And for the first time, neither of them felt like they were disappearing to make room for the other. They were standing side by side. Fully visible. Fully themselves. In the same world. They didn't talk about it straight away. Not the tournament. Not what it meant. Not the way everything felt like it had shifted again, but this time in a way that didn't hurt. They just walked. Out of the gym, past the noise and the cables and the clusters of people still buzzing with adrenaline. The evening air was cooler, quieter, like the world had turned the volume down for them. Ava tucked her hands into the sleeves of her hoodie, still riding the leftover energy of the match. "I can't believe we won," she said, half laughing. "I thought I'd choke." Mason smiled. "You didn't even hesitate. You looked like you belonged there." Ava glanced at him. "So did you." He raised an eyebrow. "Standing around doing nothing?" "Watching," she corrected. "You looked calm." Mason thought about that. He hadn't been calm at first. He'd been restless, unsure, still carrying the instinct to perform, to matter in visible ways. But then he'd seen her. And something had clicked. "I think I finally understood what you meant," he said slowly. Ava looked at him. "About what?" "About not wanting to be seen because of someone," he said. "About wanting to exist as yourself." Ava's steps slowed. They stopped near the fence that bordered the school grounds, the lights from the gym casting soft shadows across the pavement. Mason turned to face her fully. "I didn't feel like the basketball guy in there," he said. "I just felt like Mason. Watching someone he cares about do something she loves." Ava swallowed. "That's how I felt about you for weeks," she said quietly. "Before you knew who I was. I got to just see you. Without being part of the performance." Mason nodded slowly. "And I didn't know how to give that back to you." Ava hesitated. "You're learning." "So are you," he said. "You don't hide anymore." She laughed softly. "I still want to. Sometimes." "That's okay," he said. "You don't have to be fearless. Just real." They stood there in the quiet for a moment, the hum of distant voices fading into the background. "Can I tell you something without it sounding like a breakup speech?" Mason asked. Ava smiled faintly. That's a terrifying way to start a sentence. Mason laughed, then grew serious. "When we fought I thought I was losing you," he said. "Not because you didn't like me. But because I thought you'd outgrow me." Ava blinked. Outgrow you? Yeah, he admitted. You were becoming more confident, more visible, more you. And I was still stuck trying to figure out who I was without everyone clapping. Ava stepped closer. You didn't lose me, she said gently. You just scared me a little. Of me? He asked. Of myself, she replied. Of becoming someone I didn't recognize. Or worse, someone who only existed next to you. Mason's chest tightened. I never wanted to be your whole world, he said softly. I just wanted to be part of it. Ava smiled. You are. Just not the only part anymore. Mason let out a slow breath, like something inside him finally relaxed. So we're okay? He asked. Ava thought about it. About the silence. The space. The way they both changed without breaking. I think we're better than okay, she said. I think we're honest. Mason laughed quietly. That might be the most dangerous kind. Probably, she agreed. He reached out, hesitated for half a second, then brushed his thumb against her hand. Is it weird that I feel like I'm falling for you again? He asked. Ava smiled, heart warm. Is it weird that I feel like I finally met you? They stood there, hands lightly touching, no rush, no pressure, no need to perform anything for the world. Just two people who found each other twice. Once online. Once in real life. And now, finally, somewhere in the middle. Mason leaned in and kissed her. Not the careful first kiss. Not the shy second one. This one was slow. Certain. The kind of kiss that said I'm here, and I'm choosing this. When they pulled apart, Ava rested her forehead against his. I don't want to go back to the version of us that hid, she whispered. Mason smiled softly. Me neither. They walked the rest of the way to the bus stop hand in hand. Not because they needed to prove anything. Not because anyone was watching. But because, for the first time, they both knew exactly where they stood. And they wanted to stand there together. The thing Ava noticed first was how easy it felt to breathe. Not because anything dramatic had changed overnight. Not because the world had suddenly become softer or kinder or less complicated. But because she wasn't bracing anymore. She walked into school on Monday and didn't scan the hallway for Mason out of nervous habit. She didn't rehearse what she might say. She didn't worry about who was watching. She just walked. And when Mason appeared beside her locker like he always had, it felt natural instead of necessary. Morning, he said, smiling. Morning, she replied. They didn't immediately reach for each other's hands this time. Not because they were avoiding it. Because they didn't need the reassurance anymore. They were already there. At lunch, they sat together in the library again, but not in their usual quiet bubble. Ryan was there, Sophie was there, a couple of people from Ava's sports team stopped by to ask about next week's scrim. Mason listened as Ava talked. Not politely. Not passively. Actually listened. The way she gestured when she got excited. The way she forgot to minimize herself mid-sentence. The way people responded to her without looking at him first. And something inside Mason shifted again. Not loss. Relief. Later that afternoon, Mason skipped practice again. Not because he was rebelling. Because he had a meeting with the counselor about course selections for next year. Something he'd been putting off for months. When he told Ava, she blinked in surprise. You didn't tell anyone, she said. Mason shrugged. I didn't want it to be a thing. I just wanted to see what my options were. Ava smiled. That's a very you thing to do. He raised an eyebrow. Which version? The real one, she said. That night, they sat on a call again. Not gaming. Not watching anything. Just lying on their beds, phones propped up, existing in parallel. Mason stared at his ceiling. I think I spent my whole life choosing what made sense on paper. Ava nodded. And now? And now I want to choose what feels like me, he said. Even if it doesn't impress anyone. Ava smiled softly. That's the bravest choice. There was a pause. Then Mason said, Can I be honest in a scary way? Ava laughed quietly. That's your brand. He smiled, then grew serious. I don't want us to be a thing that happened in high school, he said. I don't want to be a phase. Or a secret? Or a story people tell about how we met? Ava's chest tightened. What do you want us to be? She asked. Mason thought about it. I want us to be intentional, he said. Like choosing each other. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it's not the easy version. Ava swallowed. I'm scared of that, she admitted. Not of you. Just of committing to something real. Mason nodded. Me too. But, Ava continued softly, I'm more scared of going back to the version of myself that never chose anything at all. Mason smiled at that. I think that's the answer, he said. Ava met his eyes through the screen. So we're not just together, she said slowly. We're choosing to be together. Mason's voice softened. Yeah. Not because they needed each other to exist. But because they wanted to build something that existed between them. Two whole people. Not hiding. Not performing. Not disappearing. Just choosing, every day, to meet in the middle. And for the first time, Ava realized something quietly, gently, without fear. Love wasn't about being found. It was about deciding to stay. They didn't suddenly become inseparable. That surprised Ava. She'd always imagined that once you chose someone, really chose them, you were meant to fold into each other's lives completely. Share everything. Do everything together. Become a unit. But that wasn't what happened. Instead, something quieter and stranger unfolded. They started having separate days. Ava went to esports practice without Mason waiting outside. She stayed back with her team to analyze matches. She started talking about game mechanics with Sam and the others in a way that felt professional, not apologetic. Mason went to the gym some days. Other days he didn't. He tried out for a student mentoring program. He signed up for a media studies elective on a whim because, as he put it, I want to learn how to make something instead of just performing in it. They still met in the middle. Just not constantly. On Wednesday, Ava was sitting in the library when Mason appeared with 2 coffees and a grin. I heard you're too busy for me now, he said lightly. Ava looked up, surprised. You heard wrong. He slid into the chair opposite her. Your team's going to regionals. Ava blinked. How do you know that? Sam had told her, like, an hour ago. Mason shrugged. Ryan told me. He's weirdly invested in your esports career. Ava laughed softly. He would be. Mason pushed one of the coffees toward her. Congratulations. Ava stared at it for a second, then at him. You didn't look it up. Or ask me. You just found out. Mason smiled. Yeah. I like discovering things about you the same way everyone else does sometimes. Feels less like I'm hovering. Ava's chest warmed at that. They sat together for a bit, not touching, just talking about their separate days like two people who had lives that didn't cancel each other out. Later that week, Mason went to one of Ava's scrims. Not as her boyfriend. As a spectator. He sat in the back of the lab with Lucas, watching quietly. No comments. No interruptions. No pressure. When Ava finished, sweaty and wired and smiling, he just said. You were really good. Not amazed. Not worshipping. Just honest. Ava realized that meant more. On Friday, Ava skipped hanging out to stay home and finish a game mod she'd been working on. Mason sent her a message around 9 p.m. Mason, I'm at Lucas's. Mason, they're arguing about protein shakes. Mason, please rescue me. Ava smiled at her screen. Ava, sorry, I'm busy being a mysterious tech genius. Mason, tragic. Mason, guess I'll have to miss you like a normal person. Ava paused, then typed. Ava, I do miss you though. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Mason, yeah. Mason, me too. Mason, but in a good way. That was new. Missing each other without panic. Without guilt. Without feeling like something was wrong. They met up later that night, sitting on the swings at the park near Ava's house, cold air biting at their hands. Mason pushed the swing lightly with one foot. You know what's weird? What? I don't feel like I'm trying to impress you anymore, he said. And you don't feel like you're trying to disappear. Ava smiled faintly. We're very off-brand. He laughed. Yeah. We're supposed to be either toxic or codependent by now. Ava leaned over and kissed him, soft and unhurried. We're just two people, she said against his lips. Who like each other. Mason smiled into the kiss. Revolutionary. They sat there, shoulders touching, the world moving quietly around them. The room was quiet except for the hum of Ava's PC. Not the heavy, lonely quiet it used to be. Just calm. Mason sat cross-legged on the floor beside her desk, leaning back against the bed with his laptop balanced on his knees. Pixel had claimed his hoodie like it belonged to her, curled up against his side. This feels illegal, Mason murmured. Ava smiled. You say that about everything. I'm serious, he said. We used to coordinate entire lives just to be in the same lobby. Now I can literally just look at you. Ava glanced over at him. He was real in the softest way. No performance. No crowd. No noise. Just Mason, in her room, existing. I like this better, she said quietly. Mason smiled. Yeah. Me too. On Ava's screen, the familiar interface loaded. Frontline protocol. Same menu. Same music. Same stupid loading animation that always took too long. Different everything. You ready? Mason asked. Ava nodded, even though he was right there. Always. They queued together. Out of habit, Ava reached for her headset. Then paused. She looked at Mason. He was already right beside her. She laughed softly and put it back down. Old instincts, she said. Mason grinned. You don't need it anymore. Ava hovered her cursor over the mic button anyway. Then clicked it. Unmuted. Even though her voice didn't need to travel through wires and servers and static anymore. Hey, she said into the mic. Mason turned his head toward her, smiling. Hey, he replied. Not through a screen. Not through a headset. Just him. Their avatars spawned into the match. Same map. Same game. Same everything. Except now, when Ava leaned over to say something, she didn't need to press a key. She just whispered it. And he heard her. The first time Ava had spoken to Mason, it had been through voice chat. Nervous. Hidden. Safe. Now, she didn't need to hide. She didn't need to disappear. She didn't need to choose between worlds. Because the person who found her online was sitting right there in her real one. Ava smiled at the screen, then at him. Ready to carry me again, she teased. Mason laughed. Absolutely not. You're the scary one now. Ava leaned over and kissed him quickly, then settled back into her chair. Good, she said. I finally learned how to exist at full volume. Mason watched her for a moment, heart full. Not because she changed. But because she stayed. The match started. Their characters moved together on screen. But for the first time, their real lives were in sync too. Ava used to think the world had a volume setting. Not literally, of course. But emotionally. Like everyone else was born with their sound turned up, and she come into existence already muted. She learned how to live that way. Soft footsteps. Quiet opinions. Voice chat off. Invisible felt safe. Now, standing in the same gym where the tournament had been weeks earlier, Ava felt something else entirely. Present. The esports team was setting up for another event. Not a tournament this time, just a school showcase. Parents, teachers, random students drifting in to watch. Ava adjusted her headset and glanced to the side. Mason was in the front row, sitting with Ryan and Sophie, holding a coffee he definitely didn't need and wearing the hoodie she stolen from him and never given back. He caught her looking and smiled. Not big. Not dramatic. Just there. Her chest warmed in that familiar, steady way. Sam leaned over. You ready, superstar? Ava laughed. Please don't call me that. Too late, Sam said. You're the face of the team now. Ava would be cringed at that a few months ago. Now she just shrugged. Okay. And meant it. The match started. Ava spoke into the mic without hesitation. Clear calls. Confident tone. No shaking. Her voice filled the room through the speakers. Not hidden. Not filtered. Not afraid. Mason watched her like she was doing something heroic. Not because she was winning, but because she existed out loud. After the showcase, Ava walked over to him, still wired with adrenaline. Mason stood and kissed her immediately, soft and familiar and completely unself-conscious in front of everyone. Ryan groaned. You two are insufferable. Ava laughed. You love us. Ryan sighed. Unfortunately. They stepped outside into the late afternoon sun, the noise fading behind them. Mason took her hand, swinging their joined fingers slightly as they walked. You know, he said, I think I figured out what I want to do next year. Ava looked at him. Yeah? I want to study media and psych, he said. Something about people. Identity. How we perform. How we don't. Ava smiled. That's very on theme for you. Mason laughed. You kind of ruined me. Ava raised an eyebrow. In a good way, I hope. In the best way, he said. You made me real. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Ava said softly, you didn't save me, you know. Mason looked at her. I know. I saved myself, she continued. You just heard me first. Mason's voice softened. That's all I ever wanted to do. They stopped near the bus stop. The same one where everything had first started feeling different. Ava looked at him, really looked at him. Not the athlete. Not the online mystery. Not the version shaped by expectations. Just Mason. And he looked at her the same way. Not the quiet girl. Not the gamer. Not the surprise. Just Ava. Ava laughed softly. She leaned in and kissed him, slow and easy and completely unafraid of being seen. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I don't think I'll ever go back to being muted, she said. Mason smiled. Good. Because, Ava continued, I finally like the sound of my own voice. And for the first time in her life, she meant it. Not online. Not in theory. But in the real world. At full volume.